Ready, aim, release! Anyone see my mammoth? Hello! We are here again. It is another week. I'm still Mickey. That man over there is still Carlo, although we all wish it wasn't. And we're this week joined by a very special guest, Belisarius, who I will move between calling him Belisarius and Kurt, who's above me today. How are you doing today, Kurt?
I'm doing fabulous. Happy to be here, Mickey.
Good, good. I'm glad that you're happy to be here. Otherwise, unlike all the other guests who are never happy to be here and feel pressured into doing so. Carlo.
Like me.
Yeah,
Like me.
yeah. Like this guy. How are you doing this week, Carlo?
Good. Does everybody? Did you know that today's episode is sponsored by King, aka Nigel from Dead Meta, who
Is
I
it?
wrongly ascribed the other week to be Alan Technic. Too many people, Discord names, YouTube names, stats names, got them confused. My bad. Alan and Nigel are actually sworn enemies, not even friends. Yeah, Nigel got so sick of my shitty internet connection that he sent me some things to boost my internet connection. So
Yes!
if my internet is improved today, we can all thank Nigel, and if it's not, we can all blame Nigel because no good deed goes unpunished. So there we go.
Surely we blame Alan if it doesn't work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If my internet doesn't work and I cut out, then it's Alan's fault.
Yeah.
And if it does work, it's all thanks to Nige from Dead Meta Gaming and Gaming Figs. So good
Legend.
stuff.
I could have sworn you were going to say sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh, thanks, Kurt. That reminded me. We're also sponsored by. Yeah. No. Hopefully, it's all good. Martin saying it's the only one getting a bit of robot on the audio. I hope it's not you. It's definitely not me. It might be me.
Yeah. Who knows? It might be my new my new amazing internet. Actually, gives audio or something, and we haven't prepared for it.
Yeah. All right then. So, we'll dive in to the main meat and potatoes of today, which is, as people can probably see on this image right here, this is the faction packs, the 2021 faction packs for A Song of Ice and Fire that have been delivered to the UK. Does this now mean that we can play the new version of the game?
Which version?
You print out a few more cards.
2021, right?
We playing the cards, or we playing the War Council app version, or we playing?
Yeah. This is the ever-going meme in the UK is finally over. Except more on that in a second. The faction packs actually have arrived. Now, there is a significant issue with the arrival of the faction packs. If anyone looks at this image, and you will count the number of factions, Carlo is in fact right. If you disclude Greyjoys who didn't have a faction pack, there are 6 other factions in the game. For some reason, the UK...
All factions got their faction packs.
Yeah,
there's nothing missing.
There's nothing. Yeah, there's no factions missing here. Memes aside, yeah, the neutral faction pack didn't arrive in the UK.
Nowhere. It's not just one random store. No store got them for some reason.
Which is really weird because of all of the ones that we'd have thought would want to be bought, neutrals would be the one because,
Yeah, I really wonder if maybe they sold out. Like, they actually just gave them to other people and they already sold out because they were the most wanted one.
Bit awkward. And
how long have you had them in the US?
Oh gosh, we got ours like a couple months ago, a few months ago, 6 months ago, maybe. I won't say anything certain. But don't hold me to a hard date.
I can tell you when these were shipped if you want, because we've got an image there. This was actually taken from an image of the box that they came in. These are both from Gavin up in Redcar, gaming figures. That was the date that this was shipped. That's the 3rd of May, 2021. It's the 25th today. They arrived yesterday, the 24th. So that puts us basically an entire year behind schedule. Yeah.
Which is so weird because you guys are like,
go on.
You guys are like ahead of schedule on some releases. Like you got what was it that just came out? Like the Hero Box 3s already, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have those yet. So you're ahead of us on that.
I saw Small Council Radio refer to them as leaks. Like what? And they were like, yeah, anything that's ahead of its release date is a leak. I'm like, what is a release date with Simon? Like, we have them. Nobody robbed them. Nobody imported them. They were given to our stores to sell. That's a release date. Like, they're out.
Yeah. It's pretty. I mean, we're not going to sit here and just bash Simon releases, but I mean, this one was given to me on a platter.
But why not?
So, yeah, exactly. But why not?
It is always hard to know whether to throw it at the feet of Simon or Asmodee or whoever. Like,
yeah. I mean, this. I will say that I think shipping this particular shipment. I mean, I'm hesitant to put it at Asmodee or even Simon's feet for this particular one, because I can't see there's no possible way that this has been sat in a Chinese workshop, warehouse, wherever for an entire year. Like,
yeah, I mean, like somebody did something with this box on May the 3rd. Yeah. 2001.
Yeah.
Somebody put it somewhere.
And it might have just been that, like, obviously shipping problems. We know about that with COVID and issues and stuff, which has restarted again because of the issues over in China again and Japan. So there's all kinds of problems over there again with it. So it might be likely that we see more delays. That's no one's fault, really. That's still COVID to some extent. But like we've always said here, you can't just blame COVID for everything. Have they really been checking up on this box for an entire year, being like, where's that shipment? Where's that shipment? Where's that shipment? Or have they just been kind of like, it's delayed. That'll do. I don't know. Anyway, that's the first sad bit of news.
They've arrived. Whatever,
arrived.
You know, like the UK can stop saying, you know, UK can stop using it as an excuse that, like, oh, I'll get my club back together once the faction packs arrive, or I'll start playing again once the faction packs arrive. Just play, guys. Just play.
Yeah, just play.
It's not going to get any better than this.
Mm-hmm. In other news, we also saw some. We talked about last week, Highgarden Pikemen and Riders of Highgarden, and all now coming out. We'll talk about those a bit later on anyway. With yourself, Kurt, you are a Baratheon player after all. I imagine you have some nice things to say about Baratheon units getting released.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, good. Someone has to. Randomly, as you all know, I'm a free foot player, so I bought a box of neutral Golden Company crossbowmen. I have to say, I quite like the sculpts. I know that most people don't. I do.
I saw some painted straight out of Hong Kong or Singapore or whatever, and I was surprised at how good they looked painted.
Better than a 0?
Well, no, better than the -1 I gave the 3D renders.
Right. Okay. Fair.
They are. If anyone is interested, if you've got Thornwatch as like a general comparison, they are very similar to Thornwatch. And Thornwatch are, generally speaking, quite liked as models. I don't know if I would directly say they are them, but they are comparable to them in the same ballpark in the aesthetic and design. So, yeah, there's something to be said about them. I quite like them, and I'm going to have them and paint them up for my neutral army, and also because I know that any 8-point range unit that's as shit as them when they look like that is going to definitely receive a buff in the next patch.
I mean, Mickey just dropped 2 lies simultaneously. I will have them for my neutral army, doesn't exist, and B, I will paint them. lie number 2. Yeah, there were 2 lies that he just snuck into that conversation. Let's just be clear.
I will have you know, and this is pretty bad. I now own a unit of Bolton Bastard Girls, of course, and both hero boxes, and 2 units of Cutthroats, 2 units of Stormcrow Mercenaries, some Blackguard, some Stormcrow Mercs, and some Golden Company Crossbowmen. The only thing I'm missing is the obligatory infinite number of Flayed Men that you actually need to run a neutral list. So, you know. Yeah, I'm getting into a second faction. I heard neutrals are hard, so I painted up some Lannisters instead. Anyway, all right. So, on to the actual main part of today, which is Kurt. You're from the US.
Yeah, I'm a filthy Yank. What can I say?
You said it, not me. I dissolve and wash my hands of any anti-US statements made on this show today. Carlo will make some, and it's his fault. But you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, the US and Brits are closest to friends, right?
Yeah. Keep your
we all kicked Germany's butt together, so it's win-win.
Or you know, don't when it comes to games. All right, so we've obviously seen Baratheons doing very well. When I say very well, we are going to talk about just how well they've been doing later on when we look at some more events. But yeah, you ran some Baratheons at one of the US national qualifiers over in the US, strangely enough, at Fabricators Forge. That was your ground of choosing where you decided to go and stomp on some people and ultimately get a qualifying spot for nationals, which is fantastic. Baratheons have fallen down a little bit. They're not at the heady heights that they were just a couple of days ago. I believe they were. Look at that! Oh God, they're dropping.
Posting 5 straight losses.
5 absolute straight losses. But yeah, I mean, we're talking. They were like 34 or 35 points, couple of points clear of Night's Watch. Couple of sad losses. Maybe Baratheons aren't very good. Everyone's already fixed them. Maybe this episode's already late. Oh well, what can we do?
Yeah, a week too late. No. Yeah, for the briefest of moments, we took the #1 spot, and my mind instantly went to Cornwall surrendering at Yorktown and the British band playing "The World Turned Upside Down." Right, there's my only one of those for the episode. Yeah, but like, it didn't last, obviously. And data, as we know, takes time to accumulate and to give us like a real bearing of where things lie. And you can't go off of just like outliers or one or two.
Player?
Yes, essentially, it's ever since they came out. I started out as Lannister, and my buddy mainly played Starks, and so that's where I started out. And then when the Baratheons came out, my favorite characters from the books were the Baratheons. I loved Stannis and Davos a lot, so they were the natural progression for me. And I already kind of was more of like a defensive player anyway. I liked to run Lannister guardsmen all the time, so the three up armor save was like my bread and butter.
Yeah. And in your mind, do you think they're in the best place that they've ever been? Do you think they're the most powerful they've ever been?
Yes, undoubtedly, yes. I don't think there's even a question.
That's good. I mean, I'm glad that's the answer.
And so, in your mind, would you put them at least in the conversation for the top, or do you think that there's something clearly better than them, in your own opinion?
Yeah, I think Night's Watch is still #1. It's going to take more than just crossbows getting nerfed and their ancillary, tie-ins for them to lose that, that foothold. Yeah, I think they're definitely higher than I initially thought they would be coming out of the balance patch that came out just a few months ago. I figured they'd be like top middle of the pack, like in 4th maybe. So I'm surprised to see them ahead of factions like the Free Folk and the Targaryens, because they'll consider those premier factions. One thing I do think we have going for us is I think we have so many good commanders available right now, whereas like look at Free Folk and it's like they have Mance and nothing else. I mean, I used Penrose. I always love running Stannis 1. Stannis 2 is really good. Eldon's solid. Loras is a great commander. It's like we have so many good choices that I think we really benefit from that.
Well, kind of like a kind of shooing off the back of that conversation. We'll talk about your lists later on, but one of the things that we've seen more recently is actually the discussion of, rather than do you run a Baratheon list like this or do you run a Baratheon list like that, but we're actually seeing the more plug and play style, which Carlos spoke about with Lannisters in his Lannister breakdown, where you basically have a list that you've already got formulated at 6 or 7 or 8 activations, and it's just plugging the right commander in for the feel, for the extra bits here and there. So the 6 activation like Courtney that we're seeing is also 6 activation Eldon that we've seen, is also 6 activation Loras that we've seen, is very different take, but the Stannis side lists of the Stannis Queen's Men is Stannis Queen's Mel. It's like mixing up your 4 combat units to get the right balance. With Mel, with Jaqen, maybe with Axel, mixing up. Usually it always goes back to Stannis 2 as being the most popular. But we are seeing very much almost like a plug and play style with the commanders a little bit, which is interesting. It tells me that you're right in terms of like most of the commanders are actually fairly equivalent in terms of power level. But maybe that'll change. Maybe someone will find something that's a commander that's not so good, or a commander that's amazing.
As I discussed the week, I think that the Iron Resolve, and the Iron Resolve Dauntless combo that Stannis, I always forget actually, Stannis 1? 2. Stannis 2 brings in combo with Queen's Men. I do find it as really, really a nasty unit in terms of getting it off the board. It's back to it's really back to flipping the script in terms of like that's what like Renly Rose Knights used to be. It used to be a unit that it's not worth trying to fight. You just want to minimize its impact on you, because most of the time I found that most armies currently aren't tooled towards beating it. Do you think that the meta in your area, the players that you play, do you think that they have adapted to the new strength of the Baratheons? Do you think that there is still adaptation that needs to happen to basically armor now being effectively viable, with probably like the complete lack of dragons that we're seeing and the reduction in really, really high volume damage from the Night's Watch, right? So do you think that there's an adaptation that needs to happen there? And have you seen any kind of changes in your local player base?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think we'll still see the meta shift. The ways to counter armor today are still the same ways that you countered armor in the past, whether that be better mobility, hitting them in the flank to drop their armor value, or auto wounds, dragons, sundering, damage through panic effects. Those elements of the game are still present. With regards to Champions of the Stag specifically with their 2-up armor save, I think I think I got kind of lucky in that just where the meta is right now wasn't necessarily accounting for high armor, and I think it was just like right time, right place, right feel. You see people start shying away from Night's Watch Builder Crossbowmen, and those were a great long range sundering option that could really put a lot of damage into champs before they could get across the field, plotting around at speed 4. Mother of Dragons obviously hardly ever sees play now, but would still eat up a Baratheon list like it was nothing. And like every faction has options, and I'm not necessarily the expert for every faction, so I might throw out ideas of like, as a Baratheon player, like, oh, this might scare me, and then someone else could always come in and say like, well, actually, like Mickey did this the other day. I'm like, I feel like Mag the Mighty and Giants would give me a hard time, and then Mickey's like, well, I don't know if I would actually use Mag the Mighty. I think I have a better option running some kind of variation of Mance, or I threw out Great Axes for Starks, but a lot of Stark players is like, oh, I still wouldn't use Great Axes. I would use this other option instead, whatever that may be, Tully Cavaliers, what have you. So I think there are definitely, I don't see high armor taking first and like being the unbeatable meta, in the way that Mother of Dragons or Othel crossbows were previously. I think it's another tool to have in your back pocket, and it'll play well into some things and it'll play worse into other things.
Yeah, No, that's reasonable.
What's your least favorite matchup right
now? Ironically, probably I have to throw some props to Lannisters. They're really frustrating for Baratheons to play into. They have I know Carlos shaking his head. No, they have good armor values.
I played Lannisters the other day. They're garbage. They're garbage.
Counterplot has value, and you do a lot of damage through panic. Knights or Free Folk can do this as well. Just pushing damage through via panic, and then the control elements of the Lannister deck and NCUs can be really frustrating for a Baratheon player. If you block ours is the Furies and we don't have Kingsmen, or if you counter my tactical approach or my overgrowth, those are the best cards I have in my deck. And if you knock those out, that's a real bummer as a Baratheon player. Personally, I hate playing into Nightwatch. That's just because I personally don't like Nightwatch. I have a bias towards them, and I freely admit to that. At least you know I'm being honest with you. So take anything I say with a grain of salt there. But yeah, I feel like Lannisters, despite being on the bottom right now, are a faction that can give Baratheons trouble.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly interesting. Yeah, I mean, I obviously look at it a lot of it from a Free Folk perspective when I play the game, when I think about the game, right? It is my main faction. I know, right, Carlo? Awful. But
here we go, half hour Free Folk conversation.
No. It's just one of those things. I still don't look at Baratheons as a major concern, outside of basically someone running Mel and Jaqen together, purely because, you know, I can make my entire army 5+ morale, sure, but just taking that many 7+ tests, I'm gonna fail some of them, and if I fail enough of them, my army does just run away. You know, and there isn't much you can do to prevent that outside of prioritizing certain zones like bags and things, or playing for regroup and reform, or crastering, whatever. But anyway, I don't think of it as a major concern playing like the double Champions of Stag list. I don't care. But then I look at the way that people play, and I'm like, well, if people are trying to kill these things, as you were saying before, it's fucking hard. Like, it really is fucking hard. Like, the nicest possible sense, most things running into the front of an armor 2 unit, even if you've got Sundering, it's still like armor 3s and you've generated like 6 hits. You might do a couple of wounds, and then you start kicking in the healing that Baratheon do have, especially, we'll get onto the card changes in a second, but some of the new card changes you've got, I think, are phenomenal for Baratheon. Actually, I didn't realize how impactful those card changes would be. You still have the worst card in the game, but the other cards being actually playable and good is really important. But yeah, it's interesting.
It's you know, it's a long way off, and you want to keep your secrets, but we hope you'll be taking up that national spot. Do you think you'll be sticking with Baratheons? You feeling confident to be able to take them into strong qualifying field and take them all the way?
Yeah, I'll run Baratheons, if for no other reason than just loyalty to the faction. I ran Baratheons last year at Nationals, despite Baratheons being terrible. I ran them at the LVO, despite Baratheons being objectively terrible. I did manage to beat a Mother of Dragons list, so that was like, you know, my pride and joy crowning achievement.
I vaguely remember that happening, I think, and everyone was like, "What? That was last year, wasn't it?" I think. Was that last year? Was that this? No, it was last year, wasn't it?
January.
It was a few months ago.
Yeah, it was January. It was January. This January.
It was like around the time of the AFC Championship game in the So I judge everything in like a sports timeline. So.
Honestly, it feels like a long time ago now. Probably like last week, and it was like, it's like 5 months ago. Life is awful. Anyway, yeah, it's cool. It's cool that you're going to run Baratheons. I do have a question that Marwin has been desperately trying to ask, and he's asked multiple times now the same question. He won't let it go. As a Stannis supporting Chad, do you believe he will take the Iron Throne, or the Lord Commander spot in the Night's Watch, or something else?
No. I think if he does, it'll be like extremely briefly before, you know, the more popular characters come rolling in. I think he'll go down fighting. I think he's totally going to pull an Alexander Nevsky against the Freys outside of Winterfell. Spoiler alert, everyone. With the battle on the ice that's coming up, and they're going to fall through the ice and drown and whatever. So, and I think he'll even take Winterfell. And then I think potentially after that, he could turn back north to face the White Walkers and meet his end there. Or if he pushes south, maybe he gets to the Iron Throne. Maybe he unseats Cersei, but then maybe Fagon or Dany rolls in, and who knows? If the books even ever come out.
That's a very good point. I mean, at this point, what you've said is probably more than the books have been written. So
that's a decade's worth of release right there.
We've been waiting.
Does GRM watch the show? Because I think he's got some content that he might be able to write down for the next couple of months.
I have tips for Stannis if you want them anytime, George.
Cool, awesome. So the Baratheon. We'll talk about the Baratheon cards, and we'll also talk about something else while we're here because it's here. And people didn't know. I thought people knew. People didn't know. It shows you how bad I do my job, because my job is to make sure people know these things. Carlo added the Hero Box 3 content and the releases that we've just had in the UK to the builder. So if we'll use Baratheons as an example. Baratheons had releases. We can just go down and they're sort of there, but Pikemen and Riders of Highgarden, for example, are all on there. Let's just stop by and put Carlo's favourite attachment in the game into a unit of his new list that he's going to run at. He's going to run this at Gen Con. He's going to have, where is he? Qyburn in a unit, and then have Robert Strong as an attachment in one of the others. This is Carlo's. But yeah, they're all there.
Kevin and Adam are both pretty fun new commanders. Definitely got a place in the Lannisters with those guys.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah. So Riders Highgarden, all of those things, they're all on there if you want to make lists. Images are coming. I am sorting the images out. Carlo was away at the weekend, so when I was going to message him, I was like, wait, he's away. So I was going to get the details for the sizes of things because I wanted to double check some stuff. But I'll sort that this week. So hopefully by this weekend. Because it's Bank Holiday weekend as well. I get the Monday as well to work on it. Hopefully by this weekend we'll have some images on there as well for those. People like them. Anyway, the new cards.
How about the Pikemen and the Riders of Highgarden? Are they going to be a big impact? Do you think for you on the Renly side, or feel like actually the Baratheons are currently, really excelling at their lower activation count, higher armor, higher durability, and that this new aggressive Renly style is actually almost a trap?
I think the Highgarden Pikes will fit great in a Stannis list. Yeah, for sure. Rules as written, baby. No, on a serious note, I think it'll be a nice change of pace. I think the Baratheon faction can benefit from having different playstyles that it can lean into, whether that be a lore-based list for Stannis versus a non-faith-based list. Renly's side, I think, was previously viewed as the kind of like healing, survivability, grindy side. I think that's kind of shifted now to where Stannis' side with the Queensmen and like camps and everything like that. They've got more survivability now. And I think the Renly side could really benefit from speedier units and some units with some offensive punch. I don't think it's gonna like shift the meta though. I mean, those Riders of Highgarden will suffer the same downsides that Tully Cavaliers and Nice Castle Rock suffer. You throw a weaken token on them and they're hitting on 4s, no rerolls. Bad News Bears. They don't have the survivability that say Tully Cavaliers do if they get stuck in. No.
I do think, like on that kind of note, I played a couple of games against Pikemen and Riders so far already, and it was evidently clear that the biggest issue for them is got nothing to do with the units themselves, but the lists in which they appear. And this isn't the builds that I've seen people use them in. It's a fundamental problem that Renly has, in that I actually think in order for them to work and do what they need to do, you need to be at 8 activations. Because the moment you are not out activating your opponent, or at least going pair for pair with them, you can't set up these charges effectively. And if you get charged, and these guys get wrapped up in combat, for both the pikemen and the riders, pikemen have got a little bit more longevity, but the riders have none whatsoever. They just die, and you don't have activation. Oh, not activation. Sorry, you don't have action efficiency that much with Baratheons, meaning you can't even just like pull the riders out to get a charge elsewhere, because usually you're just going to get them tied up again. You very rarely get them free to do what you want. So I do think that for these to work and for these to see the play that they need to play, and actually for them to do the job they need to do, you need to be running an 8 activation list. And that's actually one of the few things that we've seen Baratheons struggle the most with, is hitting high activation lists, because they tend not to do well. So yeah, it's,
as you point out, easy on the Stannis side with a couple of Dragonstone nobles along with the Highgarden stuff. It's absolute winner there, isn't it, Kurt?
Yeah, that's been the tale of Baratheons ever since the 2021 update. They've really struggled to get up there in activations. Renly side doesn't even have a 4-point option for the field. Neither Renly nor Stannis have access to Relentless. So they've never felt good trying to push up to 8. I pretty much exclusively run them at 7, and it's just like, well, I'm going to be down in activations, and I'll just have to try to get around it some other way, because running 8 never feels good. It's like basically almost impossible for Renly to hit 8. But I defer on that because I'm mainly a Stannis side.
Hey, is this even possible? Yeah, you can run a 9 activation list if you take Eldon, Courtney, Shira, Errol, Alistair Florin, and Marjorie Tyrell as NCUs, and then run 4 units of Highgarden Pikemen with a commander in them. I'm sure that's fine.
It's not,
there
it's
you
not
go.
An activation list, Mickey, when like the vast majority of them like either pass at the start of the round or they don't even get to activate at all.
You just set up for this. These last 4 activations that you've got are going to be super impactful while you lose all of the tempo at the start of the round. Yeah, no, don't do that. If anyone does run a 9 activation, 5 NCU Baratheon list, and wins a game of someone who's even remotely skilled, I will give you applause live on Tourney Ground, because no, that's not a thing.
I'll give it a shot. Carlos always says activations are king, so it should work, right?
Yeah, put to the test. So the actual deck then, as we're getting on to. The 2 significant changes. Obviously, there was the change to Final Strike, with that now not requiring the unit to be alive. Finally, see, double pun thing there. No one understood why that card was named what it was when it didn't do the thing that it was supposed to do. Everyone's happy that it's changed. It's a much better change. Free folk everywhere are laughing because steer just got better, because you just go.
I mean, I was about to say, I don't think everybody is happy that it changed.
oh no, everybody's happy that it changed, Carlo. Yeah, just going through a unit of raiders in there, take 12 wounds and go, it's 12 minus 1 hits back, thank you very much. But no, it's a good change, obviously. And the 2 big ones, though, Baratheon Justice changing to just be literally nothing like it was, and the other big one, Baratheon Conviction, being quite literally nothing like it was. Baratheon Conviction is, in fact, quite literally nothing like it was, except the trigger is the same, I believe. And
Plus, they no longer share a trigger, those 2 cards, right?
Yeah.
They used to both be on a pass morale test.
Hey,
now,
if I remember rightly, Baratheon Conviction was a pass morale test from a melee attack, if I remember rightly. It was garbage.
It was, I think that's right. It's what Justice used to be, but they changed the triggers and they rearranged the ordering of the card.
Yeah.
I talked about this on Small Council previously, and that's like exactly what we'd been clamoring for in Dragonstone for over a year, to get that heal moved to the initial part of the card. Mm-hmm. There were too many, too much gatekeeping, as the devs said in those cards previously. So it's like, now we have a card twice a game that can heal too. It's like, yes. Small victories.
Yeah, and it used to be when letters, wasn't it? You make everyone vulnerable, and then you heal too if you had letters. It's just like
Yeah, so it's like the vulnerable was the only like part that you could get previously, and that's still contingent upon like passing a morale test, and then the heal was only if you also controlled the zone. It was
jumping through hoops to jump through more hoops.
Yes.
So go on. We'll start talking about justice first of all. We'll come back down to conviction, but justice with the panicked and vulnerable. So just no requirement. You have to be attacked, and generally speaking, not even a melee requirement, which is quite huge. Generally speaking, people attack in this game. Not always. Anyone remembers the old Larks versus Stannis in the final? No, Ariakas versus Stannis, wasn't it? No, it was Larks versus Stannis. Anyway, you don't have to attack, but it's generally speaking probably something that most people will do in a game of A Song of Ice and Fire. Do you find, Kurt, that your units are often attacked?
Yes, it's a solid little card.
Yeah,
it gives Stannis 1 more token play, which of course he loves, and everyone else already had fucking Warcry. Let the Baratheons have some good stuff too.
It is actually like replacement Warcry. You just have to get attacked first.
Yeah, it's still reactionary in the theme of Baratheons. So.
I do think that this card is like really top tier in its power level, though. Like, when you look at the purely what it gives, it is Warcry, panicked and vulnerable, with the bonus kicker of weakened off of 2 zones as well. Not even 1. Normally it'd be like if you control crowns or if you control letters, then you'll get the weakened. But just like to throw it on for either makes it really, really easy to get all 3. But if you consider just like the direct comparison to a card like Warcry, whether or not Warcry is the best cards that commanders are bringing is very, very debatable. But Warcry, you're saying, take a test. It at least is going to be, 5 out of 6 be like your best odds of passing this test and putting it out. You're right. Proactively with Warcry, you can sort of like really choose where that goes. But the surprise of Baratheon Justice, the fact that like an enemy attacks and then you're like, bang, here's a reverse Warcry on that unit, and now I'm going to activate and like capitalize on that straight away. I think the Bara Justice is just a really crazily efficient card now. Just get card, play card, and it's really, really powerful.
It's certainly a good card. I don't want to like throw it into like OP territory because I don't think it is. Presumably on that attack, you're going to take some wounds. So I think it's right in line with where Red Priestess is right now, where you take 1 or 2 wounds to throw out 1 or 2 tokens when you attack. And no one's clamoring that Red Priestess is OP or anything. So
you did pay for Red Priestess. This one came
true. All right, there you have me.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not saying it's not an OP card at all, but it's one of those really just solidly efficient cards that everybody hopes that their deck is built around, right? Like, what really seems to, I think that all the decks have come a lot more in line with each other these days. There are there's a lot more similarities. There's no real strong outliers, I would say. Still, the Night's Watch deck is like an outlier in just the way it works, and some of the things that it can do. There's also the Free Folk deck and the huge discussion around Endless Horde and the fact that this is like quite a game-defining card in itself. Other than that, when you look at the Lannister deck, the Stark deck, all the other decks, you're hoping that you've got some cards that can make the game, and that the rest of your deck, or as much as possible of the rest of the deck, is just filled with like good cards that you're not just going to discard when you see them, that you're just going to be able to play them and get some good efficiency out of. And I think the Bara Justice is really turned what was discard fodder into a very quick, easy play value card, and that's what you really want from like majority of your deck, I would say.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. And the fact that it has 2 zone triggers, a bit like ours is the Fury. Obviously that's a bit different because it's multiple options. But the fact that it's got the 2 zone kicker as well is great because yes, you probably not necessarily want to take crowns You don't have many good replacement effects in Baratheon, but I mean everyone's got Baelish, so that's a thing. But Letters is actually just a good zone. Like taking Letters and putting a weaken token out to make that attack that attacks into Baratheon Justice, shit. And then going, oh, you attacked me, did you? Well, I'll use that weaken to make that shit. Oh, and by the way, now have that weaken token back with these as well. Is it my turn? Like that's just nice. Like it's just a nice thing to be able to do. Yeah, comparing it to Warcry is a good. I like the idea of comparing it to Warcry myself, in terms of its efficiency. But more like Asher's card Warcry, which is not that amazing, but good enough.
I'll even concede this. We talk about controlling the zones, like Crowns kind of sucks, but you can use Baelish, and Letters is considered a good zone. I think in the past, old Baratheon deck, because you had 4 cards that were just rubbish. The tactics zone was like, normally it's good. Is it good? If I just draw two more rubbish cards, now that we have better cards, we only have 2 cards that are kind of lackluster with Oath of Duty and Sustained Assault, and then commander cards can be hit or miss. I think there is more value in the letter zone specifically for Baratheon players again, so it isn't as much of a dilemma as prior to 2021 balance patch as it used to be, because back then it's like, well, I really only want swords and bags, and do I even care about the kickers I get on my cards from controlling the zones?
Yes, definitely. We should just stop by Sustained Assault before we get down to Conviction here and just say, it's such a shit
Starks
card.
And Maids Mormont.
It's just a shit
They also
card.
I feel like they should have changed Sustained Assault when they all but gave it to Champions of the Stag, right? Like,
yeah.
And the thing is that Champions of the Stag was about the only good place to ever have used it in the past. Now that's a 0 use kind of place because it's worthless on them. So yeah, I mean, just remember that it's discard fodder. Never hold it. Never keep it. Never just get rid of it, guys. Honestly, your games will go better if you do.
Yes.
It has one use.
Go on.
And that's with Kingsmen and doubling up Sustained Assault with ours, and that's it.
Which is entirely debatable whether or not that's legal.
I
that
actually
is currently a legality hotspot.
I don't mind it terribly. The only other time I've ever seen it and I've been like, oh, that might be okay, is when you've got like the Stannis Queensmen unit that just doesn't quite die, because it's exactly the kind of thing where you'll have Stannis on like 1 or 2 wounds, and you'll draw this at the start of the round and go, huh, I might hit back kind of hard, because at least I roll 7 dice with 3+ with my Stannis. So it gives you an option, but yeah, I agree. That's the best it can be, and that's still shit. So,
there's just no need for it. There's no need for it to say if you began the turn engaged. No need for that. That's the real thing.
It's actually I've been playing a lot of Stark so last week. I mentioned it last week, I think, as well. But played some Rob Commander, and his hit and run that you have to start engaged to get the retreat. It just feels shit. It just feels really bad to have a trigger that says you start engaged with units that don't want to start engaged. I mean, Champions of the Stag are about the only unit in the game which can reliably say, I'm going to start engaged, because you're running a low activation list, and all you're just going to do is fucking hurtle at things. Hence the reason that the vulnerable token they give out actually has use. But yeah, anyway. Conviction. You said before that healing 2 wounds is pretty good, Kurt. It is a special favourite pastime of you is healing 2 wounds, I've heard. So, I mean, this is more than just heal 2 wounds, right? It's got some other bits to it. I don't know if you wanted to break this down. How do you use it, or how does it get used? Where do you like it? What do you like doing with it? What do you do with your conviction of a nighttime? Don't answer that.
I like to use it on my premier units that I'm filling out points to bring to the table, the elite stuff. Unless I have Queensmen, and then I'm going to fire it off as often as I can. That's one reason why I like to run multiple Queensmen, because they're limited based on the order. They can only do it once a round, but if you have 2, you can get it twice and cash money, baby.
That is a good way of putting it. Yeah, the ability to get this back from Queensmen, like, obviously it's contingent on the passing of the morale, but I mean, if you get, I mean, let's put it bluntly, if you fail every morale test in the game, you're gonna lose regardless of what cards that you've got in your deck. You're most likely just gonna lose the game anyway, right? So you're gonna pass tests, and you're gonna heal too. Like, that's just good. And then it has the panic test on engaged. Fine, I guess. I don't really know. I haven't played it yet. And the condition token for the letters again. What do you think?
That's just like extra. I don't really worry about that too much. For me, the primary point of the card is to heal. I have the extra stuff. Cool. Everyone has such great morale these days. Panic tests are kind of meh. I mean, the crown zone has always been considered meh, and that's at a -1. So really about passing your tests, and I mean that's a throwback to why I say I think that Lannisters are one of the toughest matchups for Baratheons, because they can make you fail your tests. So I've had games where I'm sitting there like, all right, I'm going to heal my champs with my Baratheon conviction, and I fail 3 panic tests in a row because Lannisters have the means to throw out those negative modifiers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you Queensman obviously can grab this, and it can grab Baratheon Justice. Do you find yourself reaching for conviction at nearly every opportunity, and Justice is a very niche kind of play? From my experience, I've barely ever seen you go and grab Justice. It seems to be that conviction is the go-to card.
It's always dependent on the circumstances of the game and where you are currently. Like, if you are really needing to get tokens out because you have your tactical approach ready to go, and I need a token on that target so I can utilize tactical approach, that might be an incentive to pull out Justice. I do lean towards pulling conviction more than I would Justice. But if let's say you have a conviction in your hand and another conviction in the discard pile, maybe it's a better choice to go pull a Justice out of your deck just to thin your deck a little bit more. There's always that element too.
Yeah. Fair. Cool. You also mentioned Oath of Duty as being something that you don't think is very good. Now, the quest cards, everyone will sit here and tell you, are not very good.
Unless they're Nightwatch.
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, dear God, don't remind me. But yeah, Oath of Duty, I've seen this come up more and more, though. And Carlo, you obviously talked about Iron Resolve. The -1 wound from failing panic tests. Is this a meme? Or is this the kind of thing that you sit down on Stannis 2 and go, lol, only crit fails can kill me now? Well, I don't know. What do you think? Still a meme?
Carlo?
I don't think it's the worst. Like, it's not the worst of the quest cards, and yeah, like obviously I see this turn 1, and I'm like, great card. I see this turn 3, 4. When we're really getting to the action, really getting to the middle of the gameplay. Obviously, I'm thinking I could have drawn something that could actually help me here.
That's one way to put it.
And so, to have mediocre effects off of the back of that is you could say a little bit disappointing, a little bit useless, but the more that I think about them, interact with them, and see them, the less glad I am like that the quest card system exists at all, right? Because they are so like turn of draw dependent. They are so dependent on when they come up as to whether or not they have value. I do think that they all should effectively be more like Leon and Mormont in terms of like, if a unit has died, gain X. If 2 units have died, gain Y. They should not be go down, gain this effect after. Like, card must be down before unit gains effect, because we become entirely dependent on the timing when we draw this card. and it's very, they're nowhere near as impactful as Endless Horde, which is effectively, the Free Folks quest card. It is the one that they consider brings back a unit rather than the one that gives a buff. I feel like Simon feel like what they did was they created a comeback mechanism, but they really, really didn't. It's not a comeback mechanism in my eyes. What it is it's just a complete random variance of like, did I draw this card turn 1? If so, profit. If not, bad card. And the same can be said of Endless Horde. Draw it turn 1, absolutely amazing. Draw it later, still amazing. It's the difference. But like basically, Endless Horde can win a game for you on turn 1.
Yeah.
Oath of Duty, Lannister pays his debts, anything that's not, as now his watch is ended or Endless Horde, they're not really going to win the game for you turn 1, but you still love to see them because of the way that you can just play them, fire and forget, and then draw back to that hand.
This is part of me, not gonna lie, definitely part of my life now where I want to be able to be like omnipresent, and I want to see like the actual statistics on how much does Oath of Duty do in the average game that it gets played in, and be like, actually, Oath of Duty stopped you like taking 6 wounds this game because of the -1 from failing panic tests. That's pretty good. It also let you put out like 3 condition tokens. That's pretty good. Or is it that card stopped you taking 1 wound that one time, and it allowed you to put out a vulnerable that you couldn't use because you died immediately afterwards? I'd love to be able to assess that, but unfortunately, that's a level of data we'll never ever really get. But yeah, it is interesting.
But for me, the only one that I've ever really considered to be particularly useful is the Targaryen Blood of the Dragon. I feel like Blood of the Dragon +1 dice and the -1 panic from fails. In a faction, personally, I'm a big user of Jorah, and he dies a lot, but that's a trade that I always go into the game knowing that I'm kind of willing to make at some point. I may even trade him out for a point to grab an objective, but then know that he'll die straight afterwards. But that +1 attack and -1 on something like veterans or onto Drogo Flayed Men or something like that, right? It can be actually very, very impactful on the game. Whereas Oath of Duty is not going to have that kind of impact. And the unit that you're going to lose to empower Oath of Duty is going to be way, a worse trade.
I think the only time I've ever seen this do anything of any note was with Stannis. Just make him take less wounds, or even Stannis 1, because it allows you to set up for tactical approach, and that's it. I don't know. Any thoughts from yourself, Kurt?
Yeah, so it's zone dependent, and I think that's the same for the Starks quest card and the Lannister quest card. They're all zone dependent. Lannisters especially, which you don't units, but you already have it anyway.
Well, you can get +1 to hit if you take the crowns. That's fucking awful.
No, it's zone dependent, and let's talk about Baelish's once per game ability. I'll use that to claim crowns if I'm going second and I have Final Strike in my hand. I want to get that -1. I'm not going to blow Baelish to get the kickers on Oath of Duty.
Why not?
I think
it's so
I think arguably they need to make the quest cards all just work without having the gates of controlling zones. I mean, Lannisters can arguably do it better because they have Joffrey, but I mean, he's 5 points now, so.
And the benefits. I mean, the ones that the quest cards that don't require zones, so Steers doesn't. Steers Vengeance. It's just a vulnerable whenever they make an attack. Not even a melee attack, by the way. It's just an attack. No zone required. You compare Oath of Duty with Steers Vengeance, they're roughly equivalent. Steers Vengeance being weaker without the -1 to wound, but the free token every time you attack is legit. It doesn't require melee. It's probably an aggressively better card. It's still shit though. And then this is, as we say, shit. Quest cards. I mean, the Lannister one is Lannister pays his debts is I think
Although,
the
Carbo.
worst. I actually think it might be the worst card in the game. Like,
yeah,
It's up there.
there's barely an aggressive unit in the Lannister deck, in the Lannister faction, actual good list building that doesn't already have Vicious, right?
the only one I can think of is Knights of Castle Rock. That is literally it.
Right, but if your Knights of Castle Rock are still rocking around, scoring charges, doing massive damage, you've lost a unit, then I have no fucking clue what game you're playing, right? Because have these Knights of Castle Rock just sat in the corner waiting for a unit to die before they come out and do anything? Because they're almost definitely tied down. They're almost definitely lost a rank. They're almost definitely the first unit that your opponent's going to focus down and kill. So, again, brilliant. Yeah, yes, the stars align and you get this on Knights of Castle Rock and they're now 10 attacks hitting on 2s with Vicious. Yes, what an amazing combo. But no, it doesn't happen in reality. In reality, you're running flayed men and you've got Vicious anyway. So,
Do you guys remember Stark players suiciding their direwolves to get their old upon unit death card going off? You never see Baratheon players suiciding a Dragonstone Noble on stakes to get Oath of Duty.
It doesn't work for a start.
Yeah.
Does it?
No, it does.
I don't know.
Does Dragonstone Noble even count?
When a friendly infantry or cavalry unit is destroyed, yeah. Dragonstone Noble is counted as cavalry, I believe.
He is counted as cavalry.
Is he cavalry or is he solo?
He's cavalry.
Solo, right?
Cavalry solo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one's gonna suicide a unit to get Oath of Duty, so it's not worth it.
And yet,
what did that old one do? It used to give you a free attack.
It used to be a free attack, and so back in 1.6, I used to run a unit of Bolton Cutthroats with Stannis because it's okay, that's my unit that will die, so I can get my free attack from this card. I don't account for that anymore like I used to.
Last stand
doesn't even enter the equation. Yeah,
it was
something
last
like that.
stand was the which is what Greatjohn's got, I think. Modern Greatjohn's got last stand.
Specifically, the -1 panic, that can be situationally useful. Throw it on your champions of the stag to make them even more tanky. I mean, they're doing what they're supposed to do. You talked about Stannis 2 and how he has -1, so you could stack it, and then that could be cheeky, I guess. I don't. I mean, ask Stark and Night's Watch players how they feel about unyielding. Is it really that good?
No.
Yeah, there you
Short
go.
answer. But usually, actually, unyielding's a very good ability. The actual significant problem with unyielding is all the units that have it don't have any good armor typically, so they just get killed. The only one that pushes the boat out a little bit is the Berserker Mormont Veteran unit, which in theory is really dangerous. But it just for 8 points, it just doesn't do 8 points worth of work. And you stick a 3 armor saver unit in front of it and go, well, roll your 9 dice and get some misses and take some more hits and die. God, they've fallen out of favor. Zerkers really have fallen out of favor. Zerker vet spam was on the cards for a moment.
Swan Swords came back. Swan Swords came back into fashion. So
yeah, and Stormcrow Mercs for Starks again, still making appearances and yeah.
Ugh.
Stormcrows. Anyway, that was Baratheons as a whole, right? Which we obviously need to talk about. They're doing well. But we have, if I can find it, not that one. There we go. We have your Baratheon lists that, you didn't win the event. Fair enough, not everyone does. But you were in the last table, right? I know, right? I've got to rub it in. You were on the last table.
Dirty like that.
You were playing Bob in the last round, right? And you unfortunately lost to him in what I believe was quite a close game. I remember rightly. Yeah, 9-10. So you took him all the way, basically, in dance. And you were running some Baratheon lists, sticking with your kind of trueness. So you obviously talked about the Queen's Men, Stannis 2 combo earlier, very popular combo. You run it with Stannis 1.
I used Stannis 1 first.
I want to know why you run it. So Stannis 2 I've seen in Queen's Men loads. Mm-hmm. Why did you pick Stannis 1?
Well, I probably have the most games under my belt with Stannis 1, so I just feel comfortable with him as a commander. I like the tool set he brings to the table. Tactical approach is a card. And then it's great to have him and Davos NCU together. Just I like him as a commander, and I like him in the show. Okay, I'll elaborate on that further. So they talk about Baratheons, so, hey, you got that split loyalty. You got Renly over here, you got Stannis over here. But like within Stannis, there's also like another split. You have the Queensmen and the R'hllor side of things on one side, and then you also have the Kingsmen and the non-R'hllor affiliated troops that are loyal to Stannis, whether that be Davos or Andrew or what have you. And that part of the faction, and indeed Stannis himself, has always really appealed to me. In that he's not, they just did him so dirty in the show. He's not a religious fanatic. He's not a true believer in he's not drinking the Kool-Aid that Mel's, doubling out. 2 is not 3. So I've always really liked that aspect of Stannis's cause, and I'd love to see more units. Right now we have Kingsmen and then like the non-loyalty affiliated units, kind of, and that's about it. But I'd love to see that nobles. Part of the Stannis faction fleshed out more. So yeah. I've always just really liked that side of Stannis. So
like generic Stormlander kind of thing, just like actual, yeah. The guys who were there when the siege of
right. They held out against the Might of the Reach for over a year, and then they ate horses, and then the cats, and then the dogs, and then the rats, and then book leather, and what have you. And then in the TV show, it's cold for 2 days, and they can't survive.
Hey, it was really cold. Okay.
So there's plenty of House Goodman showed up and ruined their plans.
So yeah, I mean the double Lightbringers is something I've seen a lot of other people run with. It's becoming more popular. You've gone for the double Lightbringers. I've seen people run single Lightbringers and like 2 Faithful or something like that with attachments and things in. The Champions of the Stag is a bit of a strange one coming out. Is that purely for the tactical approach combo with them? Or... Yeah,
it's another good unit to throw tactical approach on. So you throw 1 on the champs and then 1 on Stannis and the Queensmen. Mm-hmm. Going back to Stannis too, I actually kind of like him in Kingsmen. I'm kind of on the fringe on that, I guess. But double Lightbringer, I like to utilize if I'm. It gives me a way to get around some other obstacles I might not have the tools to deal with. So I had a buddy throw Braun in Lannister Guardsmen once, so they're blocking on 2-up saves. Like, I'm not going to attack that. Like, that's just suicidal. So brilliant thing with Lightbringers, you can just shoot a unit that's next to them and then bounce that panic over, and morale 7 Guardsmen go to 9. Eat it. Like, probably one reason why they need to go to 6, honestly, since everything else is.
Yeah, so true. Got it.
I guess it has echoes of like the Othel Expo list, but I don't want to like. I don't want to.
Yeah. I'm a bad person. Go on, Carly.
When you generate like the generic game plan, right? Like you don't quite know what you're facing, or maybe you do. You maybe have in mind who this is going to come up against, or what modes it's going to play, or whatever. Like talk us through the process of that. But where do you see this winning? Do you see it like really pushing out high volume panic damage? Do you see it winning in like a sustained kind of game? Do you see it winning in an objective game? Like what's the mentality? And then I guess specifically off of the back of that, where does Varys make it over the very common pick of Mel in that kind of mindset when it comes to that?
Sure. So yes, this is basically my all-comer list. It's a variation of the list I ran at LVO, and that variation had 2 Lightbringers and 2 Hedge Knights. And so the big idea behind that list, aside from kind of being like all-comers, was area of control and threat range and being able to zone out people, and just the mentality that the mind games you can play with your opponents. So at LVO, I ran up against a guy running a 9 activation pseudo 11 activation free folk list, and so I pulled out my double lightbringers and I throw down palisades wherever I can to try to block or funnel units, and I use that threat of a ranged attack with negative morale modifiers to keep them at bay and kind of control the pace of the game to an extent that I can survive being out activated, and I can kind of control the pace in a way that I wouldn't otherwise be able to being down in activations like that. So specifically in that match, it was Wins a Winner, where you have the secret missions and there's 5 objective markers on the board.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I ran up and I grabbed the tokens, and he hung back because he didn't want to get shot. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to score from controlling the center, and then I'm going to control like 4 zones and score from that. And before like round 3, I was all halfway to victory against an army that I normally would struggle to get victory points against because insignificant. So that's kind of the thought process with the double lightbringers. Varys, like I said, this is an all-comer list, and Varys is just useful almost all the time. He's a nice control element, and it relieves pressure for taking bags. Gosh, we'll go through the qualifying tournament in Pittsburgh at Fabricator Forge soon, I'm guessing, but I can dig into more into that then, I guess. Yeah, I just like his versatility.
Yeah, the Varys pick is something that we haven't talked about Varys basically at all since his reveal. His initial reveal at 2021 a year ago was he was going to be going to 4 points with his new ability, and like that was a change from his old thing. And I remember the episode because me and Carlo basically said you're going to see Varys everywhere at 4 points still. He's still very good. I actually got a pin saved in our Discord channel with that exact quote in it that I'd taken from it, and then they released him at 5. So I felt like an absolute idiot because I was like, oh shit, they changed that one thing that I said was going to be everywhere. I
still like him at 5.
I think a lot of people sleep on him at 5. I think he's actually a very good pickup. I think there are very few 5-point NCUs that you should be considering. I think Varys is one of the ones that you should. I don't run him. I can't run him. But
you asked why no Melisandre, and it's almost for the exact opposite reason for why I bring Varys. Varys helps me stay alive. It helps me control the tactics board. Melisandre, I'm killing my own units in a list where I have armor 3, armor 4, armor 4, armor 2. I don't want to be killing my own units for a hit or miss panic bomb. And that's not even getting into the fact that I consider her a negative play experience for both the person running her and the person on the receiving end of her. I don't like Mel.
Yeah. That's a whole conversation that has sprung up over the last kind of couple of weeks is negative play experience, which we'll touch on again just very briefly later on. But
he's Baratheon awful, and I think both of them suck.
That's fair. Any more questions on that particular list, Carlo, or can we move down to his Courtney board?
No, I guess it just pairs with the other one. If that's all comers, what we feeling its bad matchups are. What are we trying to achieve with list 2? Or like what is it to cover a weakness, or is it to like really really push a strength, like push a single game mode, push a single matchup?
So list 2, this is the 6 activation list that everyone's been clamoring over for the past 2 weeks. I can't claim this as an original idea. Full discretion on this, or full disclaimer, whichever. Paul Grooney, Craig, who I played against at LVO, he messaged me on Discord about this Baratheon player that he'd run into at Adepticon who ran the double champs with the Glory Seekers, and I think that variation of the list had like a Davos attachment in like Stormcrow mercs, which I felt was like a little redundant on the healing, a little bit too much. So I basically, he told me about that list. I'm like, oh wow, I haven't tried that yet. After the update patch, I never ran champs prior to the update patch because I just thought garbage. I mean, I ran them a few times, but I'm just like, every time I just felt like I was confirming my gut feeling that they were garbage. After the update patch, I was like, all right, I'm going to quit bitching about Champions of the Stag. I'm going to run them, and I think they actually look good, so I'm going to try them out. And I've been running one in my lists, and there were games where they'd do okay. There were games where they'd die. And it's like I couldn't quite get it down to where I felt good running them. And then the double list came up, and I'm like, okay, I'll try that because that'll keep them alive. And I think that's what you need them to do. You're spending 8 points on them, 9 if you throw the attachments in. If those die, that's such an integral part of your list. So the double Glory Seeker was a way to keep them going, create a real synergistic relationship between the two units. So Craig had told me about the list. I'm like, all right, well, there's some things I don't like about that list, and here's my spin on it. I like Penrose because he gives control elements as well, with surprise strategy and issue commands and counterplot. Counterplot's such a fucking good card. So I don't know if I was really like planning out how this list would account for lists that the other lists might not be able to handle. It was initially like, oh, I'll try this out because Craig told me about it. And then I ran it a couple times against my buddy Cyrus, and I won like 3 games with it. It was like, hey, this feels pretty fucking good. You know, I'm not losing with this. So I was like, fuck it, I'll take it as my second list to regional qualifiers and see how it shakes out. And happy with the results.
It is very interesting. Obviously, you run Baelish and Tycho as your 2 like NCUs in the list.
Mm-hmm.
There are variations on this that we've seen in Europe. You notice there I brought up Decipher. This is the French group that we saw, and Decipher ran it not too long ago, and it is the same core concept of Champions of South Glory Seeper, Champions of South Glory Seeper, Baratheon Wardens, and then he invests the points remaining into Stag Knights rather than the Thornwatch Loras combo that you've got, which we'll talk about in a second. But he runs that with Courtney and Elena. Obviously, Courtney giving that healing that Tycho would bring, and Elena giving the NCU control, which ultimately Baelish is kind of giving you. So they're doing the same things. The 2 NCUs actually fulfill same roles within the 6 activation build. They just do it very differently. It is interesting to see that, coming to, what is basically 2 mutually exclusive areas, 2 mutually exclusive players. I can't imagine you've ever played against Decipher, Kurt? No?
I really don't go on TTS. I'm kind of like Brett in that aspect. I like to play in person.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with that. So you've never seen this list potentially. You've certainly never played against it. So for it to come about in the US as well, almost separately, shows to me that this kind of idea is certainly something that's got credence to it, because people are doing well, not just because they're good players. People are doing well with this independently. But yeah,
I do want to. Sorry.
Yeah.
I do want to add on this. Like I said, I kind of was told about this list from someone else, and then I was like, right here, I'll put my spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
I never went into this with like the incentive to like drive a narrative or to be a contrarian or break the meta or anything like that. I ran it because I thought it looked good and I thought it played good. Like I'm not gonna run 2 NCU for the sake of running 2 NCU, and I'm not gonna run 6 activations for the sake of running 6. I'm running it because I think it plays well and I think it gives me a good chance to win. And it is kind of a change up, but that's just just what it is, I guess.
Yeah, as is completely the right mindset to have as well. I think without us delving into that whole discussion, there are people out there who will look to run things just because people have said they're not good or they're counter, like rather than just running it because you think it can work. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. Now, Carlo probably, we won't see it happen live on stream, but Carlo has thrown fits at how bad Knight's Thornwatch were. You really have doubled down here on the Thornwatch and gone, you know what Thornwatch need? A bigger point investment. Let's go. 8 8-point Thornwatch with the Loras attachment.
Sure.
Go on. Well, I know what you're probably thinking, and you're going to say here, I think, but go on. Tell us what craziness went into your head.
It's just kind of a flex piece, giving me access to Expert Duelist on speed 6, something that Baratheons don't really have outside of this combo. Other people have already talked about, like, you've already seen new variations of this list, which I'm happy to see people taking the idea and improving upon it. Of, like, instead of running Loras attachment, just run Loras Commander and save yourself 2. You can accomplish the same thing. And that's true. It's a unit I can run off in isolation if I want. It doesn't have to stick with the rest of the army. So if there's an objective I need to go contest on the other side of the board, I can do that with it. Because it has built-in healing on its own just from retreating. And then, like, if shit hits the fan and I really need a heal, I have Tycho, but I prefer to use that on the champs for obvious reasons. So we'll just jump into round 1 of the tournament.
Yeah,
in round 1, I used this against get his name. He was from New Jersey. He was running a Great John Stark list. And so it was Game of Thrones, so 5 objective markers with various objectives. And on my back left objective was the one that heals 1 wound plus 1 per rank missing. And then I forget what the other ones were, but I was like, all right, I'm going to deploy left side. I'm going to stick Courtney Penrose and Wardens on that back objective, and he'll just sit there and score. I know I'm not getting the bonus from commanders anymore, but he can issue commands and then let the champs go to work. So sit Courtney on the back objective, and I throw the champs at the far objective on the left side and the center objective. And then I had and I also had a tree over there because I like to throw my champs where there's a tree, just to give them extra morale.
Yeah.
And then I just had my Thornwatch on my right flank, and they weren't, like, far away or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a bog, like, in the center right part of the map, and so he had Tully Cavaliers kind of screaming down that side. And I was like, all right, that's probably not a great matchup for my Thornwatch, so I'll just back him up and kind of hug Courtney a little bit more. I managed to get a shot off. The timing, I was like, oh, he's setting up to charge me round 2, but he'll be on the bog, so he won't get rerolls. So I'm like, oh, that's worth it. And I'm throwing weakened tokens on him because that's, like, his biggest threat piece. But he's cleaning it off with Catelyn Tully.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh shit, he can get rid of my weakened tokens. I back up. I get, like, 1 shot off with the crossbows, and round 3 or 2, I forget, I see his plan come. I see what it is. He has assault orders. Who's going to charge in with Cat and cleanse the weekend, and instead of charging the front, he's gotten in a position where now he'll charge the flank. So I counterplot that. I'm like, yes, I stopped it. But then he goes and gets it back with Sansa. I'm like, shit, because I don't have my second counterplot ready to go. So I know he's going to charge me next round, and I think this is kind of a mistake on his part. Instead of charging, he continues to try to set up for this end-all be-all one-shot, and he goes into the rear of Thornwatch. So I let him do that. That's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But at that point, his sundering is kind of moot.
Yeah.
Because they're normally blocking on 5s, so he could have gotten them blocking on 6s just from charging the front, or hell, charging the flank. So he took so much time moving this Tully Cavalier unit into the rear of the Thornwatch that it allowed other things on the field to play out, and allowed my Champions of the Stag to grind down a unit of Sworn Swords and his She-Bears unit that had Great John. Mm-hmm. And then I was scoring from controlling the points, and then the Thornwatch retreated from his Tully Cavalier charge, which didn't quite one-shot them. They survived. So they retreated. They retreated and they healed a butt ton, and then Courtney, sitting on the objective marker, healed him more, and I ultimately ended up trading with him using Final Strike. So I traded my 8-point Thornwatch Loras with his Tully Cavaliers. I'm like, I know it's 8 points to 8 points, but I feel like I traded up there.
Yeah. That's interesting. Obviously, you went on to win that game 8-1. So that was the Thornwatch taking it as a kind of like crushing. Yeah. Cool. I mean, yeah. Obviously, I'll obviously ask you now. Obviously, go us about a little bit how the list works and things like that, and how you'd want it to do. How was the event? Like, how did you enjoy the event?
Yeah, it was great. I got to meet some guys that I knew from the Discord that I had not yet met in person. Alex, bored to death. I know he's out there in the chat hitting up tactical approach. No, it was great to meet him in person. And then I'd already met Chris the year prior at Nationals, and I met Steven Stovetop at LVO, and I lost to his double Ranger Hunter Jon Snow list. But no, it's great seeing those guys. And last year, I didn't get to play Chris Tran at Nationals, and I was so bummed. We were initially put on the same table at one point in like round 2. And then the TO was like, oh, there's been a mistake. Actually, you're going to be at this table, and he's going to be at this table. It's like, oh, so I missed out on getting to play Chris Tran. So I got to play Chris Tran at this tournament. That was truly a delight.
Is he as small as people say he is?
He makes up for it in spirit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also small, so I just want to find a kindred spirit out there that's, you know. No. Yeah, no, obviously cool. It looked like, I'm not going to say it was an easy walk to victory, no victories ever are, but it looked like a fairly straightforward walk into the last round. You comfortably beat most of your opponents. And then obviously into the final round against Bob. Obviously, we can talk to Bob, and he'll no doubt give us a lowdown on how he thinks the game went. What was it in the end that just pulled it away from you? Pulled the win out for Bob, I guess.
Game 4?
Yeah. Was it Vargo?
there was some people were questioning why the final top table wasn't streamed or whatever. Part of that was it adds extra pressure, and so he said he'd prefer not to be streamed, which I was fine with because I actually my round 2 game against Chris was recorded, so that'll be up at some point. That was probably my favorite match of it. It was such a seesaw. Match 4 against Bob. So so match 4 against Bob. The possibility of just tying was a real possibility. Like, we could just tie and he'd take first and I'd take second. I wanted to play it out just so if in the event I won, I could say Baratheons won an event.
The right answer.
Yeah. But so we played it out, but don't put too much stock into it.
Right, okay. Fair enough.
Do you think that the other list would have been better for you, or
probably in hindsight? So Bob's a hell of a player. Let's just start with that. I like to go into games thinking I'm going to win, and I was on a 3-game win streak. I was on a high. So I was like, yeah, I beat Chris Tran today. I can beat Bob. Chris was Bolton Skincare was number 1 in the world on stats for quite a while, so I can take on anyone. Bob's a hell of a player. After deployment, I had lost that confidence that I could beat him.
At least
he comboed up veterans who have disrupt with Raven Flock, Crow Flock from Cold Hands. So my hitting on 3s, Champs of the Stag were hitting on 5s at a certain point in the game. I had to use Ours of the Fury just to get him to hit on 4s, which is like, woof. I did have a really clutch moment. He used Bow and March to get. He could have gotten was it Stand United Brothers and Shields, but he had to put one on the bottom of his deck, so he kept Shields and he dropped Stand United Brothers, which he really needed. And so he tried to use Shields when I'm hitting him with my champs, and I counterplotted that. And so I got rid of his Shields. Yes, because fuck Shields.
Yeah.
And then he hit me in the flank with a unit of Sworn Bros, and I had a final strike. So he actually did like 8 wounds to me, which I had to blow Tycho to heal up on. And then my final strike hit him back for 8. And so that was so that was so key. If those two things didn't play out like that
Mm-hmm.
in quick succession, then it would have been much more lopsided than it was.
Fair enough. Yeah, things that happen though, and that is how you win games ultimately, when people, make mistakes like that, or at least plays that you can then capitalize on. Now you don't come down with a win, right? But you come down with a much closer game than perhaps you initially would have thought out. So yeah, it happens.
I do want to add one more thing. Bob was. Some people were like, "Oh, well, you killed a bunch of units. You could have tabled him. You were really close." There was never. I was never going to table Bob. So my second unit of champs had picked up a dragon egg from. What is it? Which game mode is that?
Dance with Dragons.
Dance with Dragons.
Yeah.
They were speed 2, and he blocked with cold hands. And so between speed 2 and him just throwing cold hands to slow me down, because that's all he had to do at that point, was to keep his other units alive, holding the eggs. It was never going to happen.
Fair enough. Maybe just one of those ones that just traded out to kind of like a losing end game, unfortunately. With very little.
Yeah, I feel like Cold Hands, some ways he really warps the reality of what the game was versus what it looks like on the score sheet, because he's given up VPs a lot of the time, and also he's given up kill points, so it looks like somebody's really on a rampage, killed so much stuff, also scored loads of VPs. But I find it's often just the Night's Watch player really guaranteeing themselves a minor victory by just trading him out, and they know that there's no possible way that they can lose, but it makes it look like it was like a really tense game, but actually in reality, Cold Hands is just kind of warping the score while maintaining the victory for Night's Watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Picking up some Night's Watch tips for anyone out there as well. So yeah, obviously,
They don't need them.
obviously a great event. You got was it 19 players in the end that actually played at the event on the day, which is great. And congratulations to yourself for coming second, and of course securing that US national spot. We don't talk about the nationals or the road to nationals as people sometimes talk about it. There is a lot of discussion, and certainly something I wanted to ask you as an American player. Are you finding it hard to keep track of who is actually going to the nationals, or who's invited, or what events have been on, and things like that? Because I know that I've been finding it really hard. I was just wondering if you had anywhere I could get some information.
I think they have a running list on Sunday Slaughter Discord.
Mm-hmm. I've just found it.
I will say this. I really wish there were, whether it be on Sea Mountain's website, since they've added in this requirement that you have to secure an invite in order to attend nationals, I wish they would promote and tell people and make it easily accessible where these events are, where you can get an invite. Mm-hmm. There was one in California where like only one person showed up. That's such a bummer. I also, and take this as like constructive criticism. I also think that if they're gonna make it invite based, they should have added another bracket for how many invites go out. Because right now you get 1 as long as you have 8, and then at 16 you get 4. It's like, well, what about those tournaments where you have 15 people? That's such a feels bad to only have 1 invite out. I think they should have done another bracket point at 12 for 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because then you have, it's like we have our regional coming up in Kansas City, June 11th. Mm-hmm. Everyone, if you still need your nationals invite, we have ours coming up. And our local tournaments, we've had turnouts of 8 players, 10 players. This is coming out of COVID, so we don't know reasonably what we can expect. And so the very real probability of not hitting 16 is weighing over us. And that's one of the reasons that I felt compelled to go to Pittsburgh to try to secure my invite, because we don't hit 16.
Was that a big driver for you? Was that like what
certainly
really tipped it over, that this was something that you wanted? You wanted an invite, and this was kind of at least one shot at getting it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a blast at nationals last year, and so I wanted to attend again this year, especially now that Baratheons are better. And at LVO, never really had a chance. So it's like if we hit, let's say, 15 players, we only get one invite. If I win, Cyrus doesn't get to go. Cyrus wins, I don't get to go. I know there's like the last chance tournament, but I didn't want to like leave it up to that. So I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how many people are going to be there, how many invites they'll give out from that. So I feel really bad for someone in Carlo's position where it's like kind of this air of uncertainty where you don't know if you're going to get in or not. Like you hope so, but I don't want to leave that up to chance. So it's like I'm going to go to Pittsburgh and I'm going to try to snag one of those invites, and then I feel bad for the Pittsburgh guys because like, oh, I stole one of your one of your spots. Come to Kansas City and steal one of ours.
Hey, don't worry. Just wait until I fly in and steal your entire national title, and
there you go.
Fly home. going 12 wins in a row to come out of the last chance into the tournament. No, I mean, like for me, there's plenty going on at Gen Con. I really hope I will qualify and make it into the main event. But it's not a wasted trip if I don't. Gen Con's still an amazing con to go to, which is why I'm personally. I know a lot. There's been actually some discussion about like some people saying that they wished it was not at Gen Con. With the way it's kind of worked out for me personally, I'm glad that without being secured a spot, I know that I can go to Gen Con and qualify or not qualify in that last chance tournament. I'm still at Gen Con and can still do plenty of other. But I know that for other people, they feel like it's a bit of a waste of Gen Con actually to kind of like play in like a really competitive tournament the entire time. But we'll see what happens. It'd be my first Gen Con. You played at Nationals last year, but that wasn't Gen Con. That was Family Time Games at that time. Did you even like go over to Gen Con at all, or were you just in Family Time Games?
Well, there wasn't even like a Gen Con last year because of COVID. It was like all digital. I'd gone to Gen Con previously. Before I ever got into Song, I used to play Star Wars Armada. So I did the tournament at Gen Con there. And I kind of get like the vibes you're throwing out. That's like, oh yeah, you're in a super intense tournament. You don't have as much time to walk around and look at all the cool things that you might otherwise like to do. That Gen Con where I was in the Armada tournament was actually where I played my first Song of Ice and Fire demo. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. My buddy Cyrus had been trying to get me into it for a while. And so I finally bit the bullet. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll jump into this with you.
That's cool.
And then, yeah, it's a big convention. There's a lot of stuff to see, a lot of things to do. So I'm definitely looking forwards to going again. Family Time Games was a great time last year, considering all the realities of COVID and the constraints that puts on people and events. And that was a lot of fun. I would have felt better. I felt really bad about my performance at Nationals last year. So I'm hoping to do better this time,
It's always about
who you reckon last year? Was that
Baratheons again last year, and I ran up against Mother of Dragons, who I did not have an answer for back then.
I mean,
I killed one dragon before my army turned to ash.
Hey, that's actually probably not a terrible result for a Baratheon player.
Yeah, old one.
Yeah, in the old days. Yeah, fantastic. Obviously, you mentioned the Kansas City regionals, which is running in June 11th and 12th. Running it over not just running over the 1 day, right? It's 2 days on stats because US time zone.
Oh, is it?
But time zone for the UK, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think it's just 1 day for us.
Yeah, so. 1 day for you guys. Which will be on Saturday, June the 11th. So yeah, hopefully get lots of players. I know that you haven't got anyone, many people signed up on stats yet. You are several months out though, well, month and a half, 2 months out. So practically years away in CMON's terms.
I'm sure there'll be a flood of people who haven't yet managed to pick up a qualifier elsewhere, or suddenly it's their last chance. It's the last chance.
Yeah. Awesome. Right. The other thing we're going to discuss now, we'll come back on to tournaments later on when we discuss, as we always do, the upcoming events that we've got going on. We actually have had another tournament happen over the weekend, which you've probably no doubt seen the stuff from this one, Kurt, which was the event, and we did talk about it briefly. The event run by Piojo. Did I get that right? It's not Podwis. That's right. Carl always gets the two confused. Two names beginning with a P. But Piojo and the guys in Argentina ran an event, and I believe the turnout was pretty damn good. And Baratheons won.
Yeah.
In fact,
I think they had a solid 16.
Yeah. It was
South
better than
America
Baratheons winning,
represent.
right? I think Carlo.
Barrows took 1 and 2, both
Yeah.
players undefeated. It was only a 3-round event, so there was 2 undefeated players, and it was the only 2 Baratheon entries. So Barrows 100% for the entire event is pretty significant outcome.
Hell yeah!
There we go. So this is the image they put up for it. But there's the guys playing, who can I just point out the guy on the far right has got the coolest hair in the world. But yeah, playing games, they had what looks like awesome trophies. It's great to see painted armies and things. They got games going on. I mean, fantastic. Loads of pictures from the day itself. But I'll bring it up because we should, mainly because it's getting some absolute stardom for this man here. These are the guys that won the first 3 spots, and Piojo is the guy we see on the right, my right, your left. That by Carlo with the silver trophy. That's Piojo up there, who also won Best Painted Army, believe it or not, as well. So at his own event, I suspect cheating. But yeah, no. Apparently a really good event, and it is always good to see these new kind of clubs come up around the world, especially Argentina. They're really okay. They're not close, but they're really not that far from the US. You need to get some North America, South America, games
rivalry going.
Yeah, you need to get them up and have not just an NA regionals and an NA nationals. You need to have an Americas region event. Just go for it, full double continent stuff. Asia and Oceania tried to do that, didn't they?
Insert some kind of comment which because you're not on the European level, but get all the NA hate.
Oh dear, we're terrible human beings. Anyway, that was an event that happened. Obviously, congratulations to the winners and stuff, and to all the players that took part in that. And it's always great, as I say, to see new communities pop up and really take to stats. And he asked a lot of questions, and he's been very active. And I know that a lot of people on the Discord, so yourself, Belisarius, probably talked to Piojo multiple times about lists and things like that. Very active on the Discords, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen them in Dragonstone. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a lovely guy. He seems lovely anyway. So yeah, grats on them. The next thing we wanted to talk about was away from tournaments, but kind of related to tournaments and kind of on the topic of events, really. Is this kind of thing here? Rankings or player rankings, or as you kind of were saying before the episode, Kurt, like the perceived player skill that people have and the kind of mentality that puts on players. So did you want to throw it out there what your thoughts were?
Sure, yeah. There were a couple episodes on, I don't want to throw shade. There were a couple episodes on Small Council, which I've actually been a guest on before. They're great guys. And there's just a thing stuck out to me. After Adepticon, several of the guys were like, "Oh, Brett Lanford's the best. He won the event. We can't take anything away from him." I think it's always good to give props to your opponent and give them their due. And then another episode, my buddy Cyrus was like, "Brett's a better player than me." Brett is a great player. He deserves all the credentials he has and all the accolades and winning tournaments. That just didn't sit with me. For me, going into an event, I have to be in the mindset that I'm the best player. I'm going to go there and I'm going to win. Even though if you look at stats, I'm not even in the top 100, right? But going into my round 2 game against Chris Tran, he was ranked #1 in the world for months. If I'd gone into that game thinking, "Oh, woe is me, I don't have a chance," I don't think I would have been able to win that game. So I had to go into that game thinking, yeah, Chris Tran's a hell of a player, but I'm the best. I'm going to win this game. I'm going to win this whole tournament, And we have a saying in the USA, in the National Football League, any given Sunday, the worst team in the league can upset the best team in the league, which is the Kansas City Chiefs, by the way. And, you know, it can happen. You know, this game is a game of dice. RNG, you never know what's going to happen. So you have to go into these things with some confidence. If you're going in saying, oh, this person's better than me, I feel like you're just cutting yourself off at the knees.
Interesting. Carlo, you are the best player in the world, so...
Well, I mean, do you know what's really interesting? And I almost don't want him to know, because, you know what I mean, it'd be the worst possible thing. That's the reason why Mickey always loses to me.
Oh.
It actually is.
Club night, on any given club night, Mickey is easily as good a player as me. When it comes to a tournament, he just decides that I'm better than him, and I win. Simple as that. 100%. Like, and it's just like it's just the confidence. I decide that I'm the best, and I'm going to win the tournament. And Mickey's like, oh, Carlo's here. Carlo will probably win. And I think it's very, very true. You know, I am blessed with an abundance of overconfidence, so it's never been a problem for me to ever really sit at the table and think, oh, that guy's better than me. You know, I do sit down at every table and think, you know, rightly or wrongly, I don't win every game. I sit down at every table and think, I'm going to win this game. And at every given moment, no matter how bad it is, no matter what the situation is, I'm just saying, well, I'm going to win. So just like, how do I get there? And yeah, I think that's a really, really valuable trait to have. For me, you know, in terms of like in a broader sense, the whole thing about the site and stuff like that, it tries to give people their fair props. You know, that is one of the main reasons why I built the ranking system. And the way it's built, the way it is, like a lot of people said, you know, like effectively only tournaments should matter, or you know, you should have to be this big before it matters, or this or this or this. You have to jump through all these gates before they think it qualifies as being worthwhile. Whereas I believe that, you know, not everybody can meet those requirements. Not everybody can jump through all those hoops, and that those that are the best will rise to the top through this ranking system, and that everybody should have a fair and equal chance to be able to like show and get the respect for like the wins that they get. So yeah, I mean, like that is what the site's about. That is, you know, it's about promoting the tournaments that don't get promoted. It's about talking about the smaller things that don't have a huge name attached to them, and about, you know, really recognizing that somebody who's just winning again and again and again and again, even if it's not from in a tournament that you've ever heard of, or in an area that you know of, or against people that you've heard of before, like they are probably really, really great players. And that's what it's trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. I really like Paul's comment in chat is that winning in turn 0 makes the whole mindset important. You know,
right. Yeah, I'm going to nationals. I'm going to beat Brett, and I'm going to take the title, and I'm going to beat Carlo too.
Yeah.
Come on.
Fair enough.
Carlo,
absolutely.
Carlo's not that good. Trust me.
I feel going into a lot of games. I think I'm going to win, right? Like I do believe that, you know, I like to want to believe that when I sit down at the table, I'm the better player. But a lot of the time, I'm very aware that the other person wants to beat me so bad. Like,
yeah, you probably get that a lot.
Like there, that like at the tournament, you could ask everybody there. They'd be like, "Who would you want to beat?" Like, you can come last, but who would you want to beat? They'd be like, I'll beat that guy because he's a prick.
I mean, it helps that you're a prick.
Seriously, though, even if we don't play in the tournament, I'd love to get a game in with you at Gen Con if time permits.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, it's sort of like an open thing. I'll sort myself out, generally speaking, but I will actually be, I'll be there quite a few days early, so, you know, hopefully I'll be able to pick up games against some people in the lead up, maybe a video here or there if there are any kind of creators around, and hopefully I'll just play anyone and everyone I can. I do generally just enjoy playing Song.
That, or he'll randomly challenge you to Flesh and Blood, which he plays when he's not playing Song. Usually in the middle of a Song vs Fire tournaments.
I'm trying to avoid getting sucked into Legion right now. So who knows? I'll be a Legion player come Gen Con.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I saw everyone talk about Legion today when I was at work in our chat that we have with our local scene, and I literally muted the chat for myself because I'm like, if I don't get the notifications, I don't know I've got messages with interesting models on them. Yeah, that really worked, he says as he unfolds his wallet and puts his credit card details into another online store. Yeah, no, it's great. I do think mindset's a big thing. Yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned it as well, because and this is actually the thing that I see in the UK a lot, and we're obviously talking about Carlo. My experience with Carlo, you see it in the US with players like Brett. There becomes almost like I'm going to use the term mysticism about them, right? As in, like, there's this kind of like myth that playing them is going to be wildly different than playing anyone else. That playing them is going to be hard. That playing them is going to be, an experience. Any of these things, right? And it might just come from the fact that, when you play against these people more regularly and you do get the option to play against them a lot, that playing against them isn't a big deal anymore. And I always do this back to my sporting days. And it goes back to when I used to play Frisbee a lot more than I do nowadays, which I barely do at all. One of the big things for us, actually, Carlo, wasn't it? One of the massive things in our first season in the Open Division in the team we used to play for is we got the opportunity to play not just the UK champions, but they were the European champions, a team that had just come off the back of like coming 5th in the World Games, and we played them, and we played a game, and it was like we're playing like some of the best in the world, quite literally at this point. They're athletes compared to us.
Good for yourself.
Oh yeah, compared to me, definitely.
I also play at the World Games.
now you do, not back then. But I mean, it was really eye opening, and we were all just there for laughs, really. But we also went into it, and we played the first half of the game, and they said it themselves when we played against them. Like, we played it in such a way where they kind of had to take a step back and go, Jesus Christ, like, these guys are a lot better as like random people who've just kind of got together and played a game than this team had given credit for. And sure, we go on to lose the game, but we didn't feel bad for the loss. We felt like we'd been at a show that we could do it, and that was something that I experienced then. And then with obviously Song and stuff like that, playing against Carlo a lot. I see Mikel up at number 2. I play him all the time, and it doesn't bother me that I'm playing against like arguably one of the best players in Spain, if not the best player in the world. Tom Tyler, like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to actually call him out. I don't think Tom's that good a player. I actually gladly play against Tom and feel like I literally go into a game against Tom, I'm like, oh, I'll beat Tom, he's easy. I don't, but I feel like I can. I feel like, I'm better than him. I don't think the Arx is that good. Don't beat him very often, but I don't think he's that good. It's that confidence that you were saying before, but it only comes from having played against these people a lot. A player that for me for a long time, actually down there in 12th place, was Furioku. Like, I played Furioku so many times in the Free Folk versus Stark matchup in 1.6 online that it became almost sad to have to play it because I knew pretty much exactly what was going to happen, and it became a bugbear to have to face him. And it became exactly what you were saying before, Paul. Kurt, you just absolutely fuck yourself before the game starts, and then you don't win.
It's interesting because you talked a little bit about like the mysticism, this idea that like somebody at a really high level would play in some seriously different way, but like I have always maintained that, and some people disagree. Like some people, in good people, I'm pretty sure that Jacob Uglaze, he quite distinctly disagrees with me on this fact, which is I believe that good players don't do anything special. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't believe that there is enough space in a Song of Ice and Fire to do anything particularly special. The game's not that inventive. Like, there are more consistent strategies. There are less consistent strategies. There are people who take more risks. There are people who take less risks. There are mistakes. And there are very clear mistakes in my mind. Once you're like of a certain skill, once you're once you're at a certain point and you've had a certain amount of experience, you can see a mistake happening, or like you'll make a certain move and instantly know as soon as your opponent like says, "Okay, I'm going to activate XYZ," you know, you made a mistake here. And that to me is the only thing that really defines the top players, which is, can you minimize how many mistakes you make on the day? Whereas I personally don't believe that, like, if we both play a near perfect game and we're both very, very good players, it's not going to be decided by who was better. It's going to be decided by the random chance. It's going to be decided by our list. It's going to be decided by what cards we drew, what dice we rolled. But majority of games, they are determined by at least one mistake. And so if you just constantly keep looking for that mistake and don't make it, or keep trying to create situations where your opponent might then fall into that mistake, yeah, it can happen. Other than that, like, there's no super special moves. There's no crazy, like, you know, crazy play that somebody else didn't see happen and then just like pulled out of nowhere. It's very, very rare that a top player who plays very, very regularly and has played against a whole range of different people and a whole range of different factions, they're like really surprised by something. Like they're like, "Whoa, I did not think that was going to happen," or "Oh my god, that was a massive mistake. I've been caught out here." And so, you know, like, the top players, they're just experienced, and they're just, you know, concentrating. You know, like, concentration, God, it matters. And maybe you could say that there's a skill in tournaments. There is a little bit of a difference when you come to dragging on to 6 rounds, 4 rounds in a day, 6, 7 rounds over a tournament. Like, if you can really minimize your mistakes and keep your concentration high at that point, then yeah, okay, maybe you're talking about skill. You could call it skill at that point. But I still just think it's you know, mentality and concentration on the day.
Yeah, definitely. But Paul's also right. He always loses because of his dice, not his skill, because he's the best in the world. Oh dear.
Well, Lee Teddy has a brilliant saying, which is that the reason why A Song of Ice and Fire is the best game in the world is because you can blame both the dice and the cards for why you lost.
One of the things I did want to touch on that kind of side of it is we've seen a lot of people saying, you know, surprised by certain things, this, that, and the other, or and Daryl of all people, kind of says it himself a lot. One of the things he doesn't do is he doesn't read his opponent's list, right? And I always think, and I can see your face, Kurt, there is kind of like, what the fuck? Yeah, like, the beauty of A Song of Ice and Fire, and you can argue about this in lots of games, right? But A Song of Ice and Fire is much closer towards this end. There's not a single piece of information you don't know outside of the exact cards that they've got at this moment in time, and the dice they're going to roll. Now, nobody knows the dice. You can't control that, so don't even try. Right? If you get unlucky, you get unlucky. If you get lucky, you get lucky. Let's put it, most of the time, it will even out across a game. The much more significant issue is knowing what can happen when you do an action, like knowing the outcome of an action. And people sometimes forget, and it leads into a very interesting question of, should you tell people the outcome of an action if they aren't aware of what the outcome will be, unless they ask you? This whole kind of situation being like, if I move a unit forward and I pivot in a way and I say, you're still in my front there, and we measure it and it's like, yeah, it's about right, whatever. I would then I would help you then orientate the unit so that they were still in my front if that's what you wanted to achieve. But I would never tell you, if you moved your unit forward, pivoted, and then just finished, I would never say, by the way, I'm in your flank. Is that what you wanted? Do you know what I mean? I think there's a difference. I don't know what you feel about that, Kurt.
I think it's, you know, just good sportsmanship if you want to, like, mutually agree that something's in an arc or out of range or in range at, you know, before you finalize your move. And I find most players are probably accommodating to that. They're going to be like, I'm going to move here where I'm, you know, just out of 14 inches by a millimeter. and then generally people will respect that and stay true to that. It's like, oh, I can't shift up 2 inches and shoot you long range. Like, fine.
That's the talking like playing with intent and the intention. But what about those times where people just move something? And like I had a good example of it come up actually. Someone made an attack and then they've forgotten about Sentinel. Is it my responsibility to tell them I've got Sentinel on a unit when they make an attack, or is they're about to make it?
I mean, it's up to them to do their own triggers. I mean, I'll generally help out if I see someone making a blunder, because I don't want to win off of something that like shouldn't have happened, right? So I was round 2, I played Chris Tran. Can't say enough about the guy. Awesome dude. I was spending his tokens for my tactical approach, and a couple times he forgot to take those tokens off that I'd spent on tactical approach. And so it's like, well, I'm not gonna fucking cheat and like take advantage of like an extra token that shouldn't be there down the road. I'm not that kind of player. Maybe some other people would. You'd hope not. You want to hope, you give everyone the benefit of the doubt and hope that everyone's going to be on their best behavior. But I mean, I guess that's possible.
I mean, for me, there's a clear line there. Like, it's actually both of our responsibilities to take that token off. So, like, I have cheated if I don't take that token off, right? So, for me, I will always 100% try and keep the game state right? Like,
yeah.
You've taken off too many wounds there, by the way. I didn't, like, hey, or you need to take more wounds off, or you need to take less wounds off, or by the way, I did fail, I didn't pass, whatever. Like, you don't. It's both of our jobs to make sure that when an action resolves, it resolves correctly. But when it comes to prompting to offer you information which is like optional, shall we say, by the way, I have Sentinel, I'm never going to offer you that information. I'm never going to tell you, by the way, this might go badly for you, because like I say, I think there aren't many places in this game where people can show that they are more or less skilled than each other, and knowledge and understanding of the ramifications of what's about to happen when you attack, considering that the information is open, is one of the few places where one person can show, like, I am better than this other person. You could say, well, it's not really that skillful to like have a good memory of all the abilities or like understand these kind of things, but like I say, I think that there's not many other places to show what skill is. So kind of like understanding and knowledge of the game, one of the key places. At what point do we end? Like having a very good knowledge of like all the important cards in your tactics deck is also like something that's quite key to me. And that's not fully known information, as you say. Like, I know that they exist. I don't know whether or not you have them. I can choose to play around them. I can choose to be terrified of final strike. I could choose to like not make attacks because of what might happen, or of Fury for the Fallen, I might get countercharged, or any of these cards, right? Or I could just choose to assume that you don't have it. The difference is that I do know that you could. To then like offer somebody, by the way, I might have this card, it would be something that I'd never do outside of like teaching a beginner how to play, like outside of literal beginners, where you're trying to just like introduce them to the game. That's just a thing that they have to like understand is one of the mechanics of faction. It's a learning curve.
Yeah, I'm not going to offer up that I have Final Strike in my hand, right?
Why not?
My discard is public information. If they want to go through that, I'm happy to walk through that with them. On like smaller things, maybe people find this annoying, but I almost always walk through like how the math falls out. So it's like, oh, okay.
Me too.
Iron Resolve +1, Heart Tree +1. You're hitting me in the flank with Vicious, that's -3. So this 5 morale becomes a 6 morale panic test, right? I'll usually walk through that.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree on that point. I find a lot of people, they just like to, they sit and then they just like announce, oh, this test's on it. And I'm like, I actually disagree. Like, can we walk through it together? Because
am I missing something? Are you missing something?
Am I missing something? Are you missing something? Because I don't think the test is on that. Whereas if we just walk through it together, then we'll just like point out which one or hasn't been.
Especially with extra damage now, or negative damage, if you will, with the minuses, it's always important. Like when we play Carlo, isn't it? It's very much a case of you say two numbers. You say like it'll be like a +3 -1, which is like an amazing test.
Every test is a it's a -2+2 test. You know, like it's the terminology for what a morale test is, and morale is the major one. You know, like the modifiers on morale is crazy these days. Like it really is. You really are like you gotta have your hand out, and you're like it's on a 5, it's on a 6.
Lot of arithmetic.
Or it's on a, you know, with +2 wounds for the you know, for +1 for the hear me roar, +1 for the intimidating presence, -1 for your XYZ. You like. It's all over the place. It's up, down, up, down, up, down to get the final number. So the amount of times that somebody forgets something is really common.
I like it when you add up all those numbers and you get to something like so it's like a +1 0 test. Brilliant.
Yeah, just flat test, basic morale.
Soren there says, do you remind people about tokens on units? Generally speaking, I do, but that's just because I've seen people. Tokens can be missed, usually when things get moved around, and I've had a game where I'm like, I'm 90% sure you've had like a token on this unit, and then when I've picked up some other tokens, I've accidentally picked up another one. Even like Friday, I was picking some tokens up and putting them away, and then my opponent said, isn't there a vulnerable on that unit? And I went, yeah, there should be, and I realized there wasn't because it had been swept up in other tokens. So doing things like that is I think completely reasonable. Especially if it's like, as you say there, announce a token before you roll, like, you're weakened or vulnerable, panicked, whatever. Yeah.
I always ask, always ask, like, if there's a vulnerable on my unit, you hit me with 4 dice, 2 of them are hits, and I block 1. I'm like, even if it's just 1, and I don't think you're going to spend the vulnerable, I'll always ask, like, do you want to spend the vulnerable? It's up to you.
Yeah.
I do.
But distinctly, I'm not going to tell you that you're weakened before you declare a charge.
Sure. Yeah.
When you activate a unit and say, I'm going to make a charge, I'll say, okay. And then, I'll let you roll your dice. And then I'll say, and I'll use that weaken, please. You know, again, it's like, it's open information. The token's right there. You know, I'm gonna let you go as far as a certain point. You know, if you attack me and I'm vulnerable, I will say, I want to use this vulnerable. I'm not like let you completely miss the existence of the token in that sense, which is odd because I'll let you miss it in the sense that I'll let you perform an action which you might not have realized I have tokens to affect.
I think the actually other important one, and I know Carlo, you don't necessarily always like it when I do this, but I do feel that like taking through the steps, like we talk about the maths there, or like tokens when it comes to right, I'm making this attack and you're vulnerable and weakened or whatever. I do feel that walking through the steps there also quite naturally means that triggers get covered, and that is actually one of my biggest things that I've seen happen more recently. And it might just be with newer players or with players less familiar, but players will just say, like, I'll activate this unit, I'll do this, and then I'll do this. It's like, well, you can't just jump straight to the final result in all these things because the individual components of that pathway matter for different triggers. And it's little simple things like they'll say, right, I'll activate my unit. And then they might do some test movements and things like that. I say, right, and I'll do my cavalry move here, then I'll do that. And they'll say, well, you started within long range. And traps is a good example of this because it's a kind of an awkward trigger timing. But it's like, well, I'm just going to give you -1 move, or I'll do the hits to you. You have to do that first before you then do this next bit. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the kind of like the sequence of play should be narrated so that triggers can be then thrown in when they need to be, and not missed. You know, if we both say,
I do personally. I find that, and I am personally willing actually to let my opponent give away more information than they should, right? In terms of like they effectively show me exactly what they're going to do. And they'll be like, oh, can I like check a distance? Can I check some stuff? I'm like, yeah, sure, do whatever you want. You wanna show me exactly what move you want to make next? Fine by me. They go and show me the move, and they're like, I'll do that, and I'll be like, no, go back to where you were. It's like, by the way, I'm doing this, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, you checked. I let you check. You wanted to check your distances, but like, when you now actually say, I'm going to activate and do this thing, you've now met the trigger, right? So I mean, like that, again, that might borderline, for some people, that might be, you know, they might think that is kind of like, you know, unfair. But to me, if a person needs that level of kind of pre-measurement, if they need to check things constantly, they're effectively showing their hand. I think you give away people even give away a lot of information. If you know a tactics deck incredibly well, a good example of this is, for example, the Free Folk deck, which I now know very well from playing Mickey a lot. There are a lot of things which can be like units within short range, right? As soon as a person moves a unit and then they start checking whether or not that unit is within short range of other things, it gives me an idea that, okay, they might have theirs too many, they might have, surrounded and exposed. They start to give me information, and I think that people have gotten into a tendency of pre-measuring too much and not, and that gives away a lot of information to somebody who's like really clued into what the cards do. As long as you understand what the requirements for that trigger are, or what the requirements for the card are, if your opponent visibly shows you that they're trying to meet them, then they effectively just telegraph that they have this card.
The key is if you measure.
Can be a bluff.
Yeah.
Can be a bluff.
You measure everything.
That's when things get really deep.
If you just measure everything, I have started doing this sometimes. I'll move a unit up and I'll be like, I'm pretty sure it's within 6. So I'm just going to measure out 6 inches to this unit and be like, oh, look, there's coordination tactics. And then I'll be like, oh, and by the way, I'm just going to check this is 6 inches. And then this one over here is 6 inches. Then I eventually get to the thing that I actually wanted to check where I'm there we go. That is good.
Because it gets into mind games that you don't necessarily want to give away your hand. So it's like, all right, I'm measuring long range for issue commands, but I'm going to measure like 3 or 4 other things that I have no intention of doing just to try to throw the person off so they don't know what it is that I'm thinking of trying to pull off in the moment. Yeah, for sure.
Evil Sponge has had some great comments tonight. He was saying before he can't control the dice, but he has loaded 6s. So tell that to his loaded 6s. And he's going to need a poker hat and shades so he doesn't broadcast any of his tells. It is a thing. I have a tell. I tend to activate an NCU on round 1 if I have a sword in hand as a free folk player. So yeah, it is interesting.
And we all know from Michael Schnall that that's not the best strategy.
Yeah, march up the center.
March up the center.
No, actually, march up the center can actually be really good sometimes.
I won't even lie to you. I have stopped activating all my NCUs first and taking the tactics board because of the nature of certain things. Just because sometimes I'm like, I really want to get that trapper in long range of that unit before it does anything. Certainly true with all those kind of like passive effects. But yeah. All right, awesome. We've talked about Baratheons. We've talked about Lannisters last week. We can't talk about Lannisters again. We've not talked about much else. I will quickly say I've been playing some Stark games. I've been playing some lists that like Psycho Stee was running actually. Probably into bad matchups, as in like taking the wrong list into a matchup, like taking Brynden into Feast for Crows, which I think is dumb. Brynden Outrider. I have a newfound respect for why Starks are as low as they are. Like, I actually thought they were good, and I still do think they're better than this ranking would suggest. Think Starks.
Every faction is better than their ranking suggests, right? Like every faction, when played
really
with its best commander and really good lists, is definitely better than its ranking suggests. The best a faction can do is not its average performance. And but even the average was saying earlier, I mean that Baratheons even to be in the discussion of in there with Targaryens and Free Folk as like premier factions is like, well, are they? And yet I don't think Greyjoys are that far behind. I don't think Starks are that far behind them. I don't think the Lannisters are that far off the pace when played the very best, but they're still definitely worse than all those things above them. The only one I still don't really have a gauge for is like just how bad neutrals are, and I just noticed that they are slipping lower and lower and lower. Minus 58 is actually pretty low now.
They're not quite there, but they are nearly 100 points south of Night's Watch, which is not great. But yeah, I have a newfound respect for how bad Starks are though as well. There's a lot of stuff in Starks where you think it looks good on paper, but You know, it really doesn't come to it when it comes to the game. You're just like, it's not actually good enough, or it doesn't have the right trigger that I want, or it's just not what I want to get from a card that I'm spending resources to then try and activate. Stuff like that. But I do think, you know, one of the worst factions, I do think, there's still game in them. There's still game in them. There's still game in every faction, which is the nice thing to see. And I do think, you know, we said it before, people say it before, it is certainly the most balanced the game has ever been, which I do think is true.
How many factions do you play, Kurt?
I have every faction except for Nightwatch, technically. I don't have every unit. I have the starters for all of them except for Nightwatch.
What do you consider that you regularly play?
I'd say my main two are Baratheons and Lannisters. I dabble lightly into like Greyjoys sometimes. I plan on getting Dorne when they come out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really do genuinely believe that you cannot say that another faction is good unless you play it. Like, I really don't believe that until you've played a faction and like really like dominate. The only people who are allowed to say a faction is good are the people who are dominant with it. Because I've looked at a lot of factions in the past. You know, I've looked at Targaryens and I've thought, God, Targaryens are so powerful. Like, why aren't people just like absolutely dominating with Targaryens? And then I go and play them and I'm like, you know, when you're in the driving seat, like the deck's not as good as I thought it was. I don't like the triggers as much as I liked. You know, I'm discarding a lot of this deck. It's not as powerful as I thought. And there's all these weaknesses that I didn't really see before. I don't feel as comfortable playing it as I thought I would. When I looked at the list from the outside and the perspective of lists people are running, I'm like, God, how could you not win with this faction? Start to play it, and I'm like, hey, it's not that good. And then, you know, I have an idea about what I think. Like, oh, Greyjoys are so, like. But Greyjoys are way more powerful than Targs. Like, you know, like how are they not above Targs? I think that they're really, really good. Look, they can field 9 activations. You could do all this silly stuff with Victarion, like all these things. And then I play it and I'm like, hey, you know, like I'm not saying I lose. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm like, I see why it's not dominant. You know, like I'm like, okay, now I see the other side of it. I feel the pressure. I don't feel in a commanding position. I feel like what I thought was just going to be an easy win is actually like a really hard fought game, really tough. And the deck, again, nearly always it comes down to like the deck doesn't feel the same when you play it as when you see it on the opposite side of the table. And so I really do think that like you're not allowed to say this faction that I don't play is overpowered.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed to say this faction that I play is overpowered. Yeah, like I play it because it's the best thing and I win with it and it's easy. You're allowed to say that, but you're not allowed to say, oh, this thing that somebody else has is OP. Because really, I think that as soon as you start using it, your perspective will change. And honestly, I mean, the only it's 2021, not season 1. But the only time that I've ever thought, God, that faction is like ridiculous. Like that's a joke. That's going to be really, really powerful. And then I played it was Nightwatch. And I was like, literally like a week later, I started playing it. I walked into a tournament. I was like, yep, that's as strong as I thought it was. Yep, that was a win. That was easy. Yep. Yeah, that's overpowered, guys. And then I was just like, well, you know, I'm not really interested in that. I'll stop playing it.
And everyone suffered with that for nearly a year, didn't they? So
yeah. Yeah, and I really was known. And I am interested to know, I'm interested to go back to Nightwatch to know where the reality of it is now, because obviously that specific list and those specific things that I was using were nerfed into the ground. And I still think that the faction is strong, but I don't feel like I have the same position to sit there and say Nightwatch are OP, Nightwatch are the best faction. Because I'm not playing them, I'm not building lists with them, and I'm not feeling it from their perspective.
That's definitely,
I agree to an extent, and I disagree to an extent. I think you can playing a faction obviously gives you a better feel for that faction and its pros and cons than just playing against it would. But playing against something, I feel like you can still say, "Hey, that's strong," or "Hey, that's weak." And there's been kind of this attitude that we have to like shy away from using certain terms that I just feel like shouldn't exist. We're gonna say like when 2021 updates were first coming out, people didn't want to say buffs or nerfs. Just say buffs or nerfs. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Call a spade and move on with it. So if something's overpowered, it's overpowered, and I don't feel like we have to shy away from. I mean, like if you're trying not to be hyperbolic, don't be hyperbolic and just measure your comments. But don't shy away from a term because bad voodoo or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree there. I mean, I can fundamentally say there are things like, for example, in Free Folk that are too strong. You know, and I have said that multiple times, be it here or in person or whatever, and I stand by those words. But when people talk about, you know, and this is one faction, it's not the only faction that gets it, but when people start railing into it, and you're like, yeah, but you've not, like, if it's that good, then this would be doing really well all the time, and it would be that simple. And again, the only thing for me at the moment would be my only real concern in the game as it stands is the Night's Watch base deck, which has seen no changes after the update, which was still very strong. And
that's the one thing that I can speak to, that I still just, you know, I played with that thing and it was as strong as I thought it was going to be. Like, you know, you pick up a card and you're like, oh, that's good, and that one's good, and oh, look, I'll play this one, and hey, look, it still has an effect the next turn, and this is just getting easier and easier.
Well, the big thing for me, and I don't, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's amazingly compared, head and shoulders above the other decks. It probably is the best deck, but it doesn't mean it's like miles better. But the big thing for me is, like, why do we have a deck that has a trigger? You know, for example, Shields is the best example I can think of. It has a trigger. When you roll defense dice, re-roll them, which Balon has for expending a panic token. I think Arik has something similar. Some other factions have very similar effects, but they have to spend resources or have a requirement, and they don't get a lingering buff. So it's just a straight up card comparison. Now, I know you can't do cross-faction comparisons, as they always say, right? But of course you can. Yeah, of course you can.
Exactly. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Funnily enough, when like two people get an identical attachment, except one of them has an extra ability, or one of them costs 1 point less than the other person's, even though they're identical, you can't help but compare those things.
Yeah. And unless you're making the units or something else within the grand scheme of things not function, then, you know, we made this thing better in this faction because this other thing is worse, and that's the trade-off. And it's like,
right, but there have to be trade-offs for that to actually make sense. So if you're the Night's Watch and the devs straight out come out and say, oh, they have the best attachments because that's going to be part of their identity. Okay, well, where's the trade-off? Because they also have the best deck. Oh, they also have the best baseline units that get stronger with an attached card that they can stack infinitely on. They also have great commanders. They also have, goes down the list. It's like, where's the drawback? And that's why I always say Night's Watch aren't the real elite faction, because they don't have the downsides that an elite faction would have, which you would think would be maybe expensive units, so you can't run as many. Maybe they're slower. Oh man, it sounds like someone we know, doesn't it? Sounds like the elite faction that embodies elite is Baratheons.
You're not hear the fact that Night's Watch is the only faction you don't own. Like, that's the thing. Like, like that. You have all these issues with this one faction, this one faction, and it just so happens to be the only one you don't play. Like, you know what I mean? You're not. I think that it's so coincidental, and like I do agree. I like, if you ask me, hey, there's US Nationals is this weekend, game exactly in the state that it's in right now. Carlo, you want to win? What faction are you going to play? My answer is I'll play Night's Watch. Even though I haven't played with Night's Watch this whole edition, I still think that my best chance is just picking them up this weekend and playing with them. I think they're the strongest faction. I still think, personally, that unless you're a Night's Watch player, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to rag on the faction. You're not allowed to rag on other factions.
I mean, I'm going to say anything I want.
The other thing that's important to note for all those Night's Watch players listening, or for Hilo because he'll be listening in, being like, "Oh, those guys Bash Knights watch again." They're nowhere near as good as they were. Like we can succinctly say that they are not the absolute stupidity that was the previous edition, where, to put it bluntly, if you were of equal skill, you were probably just going to win a game because you picked the faction and knew how to build a list. They're nowhere near that like polar as they used to be. So, we say that they're inverted commas OP. They're really not overpowered. They just happen to be the best. But yeah, go on.
I do want to add on as a qualifier that for all my distaste for the faction, I do feel really terrible for the Nightwatch players who have either felt like they don't want to be that guy, they don't want to run the strongest stuff, and they feel like maybe like as if they can't play the stuff that they've paid money for. Their hard-earned money to buy these units, paint them up, put their heart and soul into them, and then to feel like the bad guy on the block. That's that's not where we want the players to be. So that comes back to we need to balance the faction.
I do think there's actually a lingering hangover with that as well. Like partly including like my own perception and stuff like that. I haven't actually played the faction since it was ridiculous. And when I played it, I played the ridiculous stuff because I wanted to experience it as I believed it was in its strongest form. And when it was as strong as I believed it was, I put it down. So my only experience with them is during this period when they're hyper powerful, and it still warps my view of what they are now, even though they aren't. That list which I ran is not even legal anymore. That's not that list doesn't do the same thing. It still warps my view of how powerful the faction is. So I should go and play them before making a really strong kind of forming a really, really strong opinion about how powerful I think that they are. But in my mind, they are still the faction that I would default to if how are you going to win this event? Like, what's your best chance?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't really know what to say after that. I am. Go on.
I have played Night's Watch twice. So there's my license to kill or whatever.
I mean, I played Night's Watch.
Yeah, Ilya's right. I don't actually. I have no problems playing the most powerful thing in the game. Like,
yeah, I don't think people should hamstring themselves.
No.
Run what you want to run and run what you feel is best, and go kick some butt.
Yeah, I challenge myself to play lower rated factions, less powerful, less good factions. But when I do it, I don't bring a bad list. I still look at that faction and I go, what is the very best thing that I could possibly play? Like, how can I make this faction as good as it possibly can? That is the challenge that I always bring myself. And if I've chosen to play a top tier faction, I'm not going to stop saying, how can I make this faction as good as possible? That is always the challenge that I set myself. My challenge is to get the most from the faction that I possibly can. And if I happen to be playing something that can achieve a lot, then I'll achieve a lot, and I'll achieve as much as I can. So that's just my mindset, though, and I don't apologize for
it. Yeah, last year at Nationals, I told you I played into Mother of Dragons, and so like the whole time the guy was like apologizing to me. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. It's just it's Nationals." I'm like, dude, you don't have to apologize to me. Like, yes, it was miserable watching my units get obliterated, but it's like I don't believe in like shaming another player for the list they bring, even if it's a list that's not fun to play into. Like, it's part of the game, and people shouldn't be shamed for playing strong stuff. Like, run what you want to run, do the best you can with it. All the power to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Run what you want. That's why I'm never gonna stop playing Free Folk. There's no way I can stop playing Free Folk. I fucking love playing them. I'll play other factions as well, of course, but it doesn't matter how good or bad they are. I will always play them. because it's the only army that
Maybe
I
I can't say the same for Lannisters.
Well, the difference is, Carlo, is you literally collect everything and play everything, and because you don't play on TTS anymore, you'll play it physically. If I play another faction, I'll just play it on TTS because that's my chance to try it out. There's a reason I'm like I now own Greyjoys, you know, and I've got the hero boxes, got everything. Once I'm done playing Free Folk physically and can be asked magnetizing tons of Greyjoy trays because lesson one of playing physically, as Carlo recognized the other week when he was playing Greyjoys, the biggest pain in the fucking arse is putting shit back in boxes. Like, I never thought I'd say that. Like, honestly, the worst part of this game is looking at this unit I've got here and realizing I have to box 12 models and a tray into specific areas in a box every time I want to play it. The moment I've got a tray magnetized, and I don't give a Carlo knows me, I don't paint fast enough and I don't paint well enough to actually warrant it. But like, I'll play with something unpainted as long as it's fucking magnetized. I cannot be.
Yeah, I
fucked.
played Greyjoys. I played Greyjoys for the first time. I brought a 9 activation, like Archer, Trapper, Reaver kind of spam thing going on. 60, maybe even 72 models on the board, and none of them were magnetized. This is the first time I've used a non-magnetized army
For a long time.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
And I played the game. I enjoyed playing with Greyjoys. It was fine. It was enjoyable. And at the end of it, I was like, nope, not playing this army until it's magnetized. Simple as. Never, not again.
Never again.
Yeah, that's going back in the box until the magnets arrive.
The funny thing is that I believe the last time that Carlo played an unmagnetized army was before he'd fully finished his Targaryens, where he had like 8 models on the board, so it didn't fucking matter. So, you know, oh god, magnetized, certainly for infantry. Jesus Christ, it makes a difference. Anyway, there it is. Before we run through the tournaments for the week, Kurt, is there anything else you'd like to go through and discuss?
Oh, jeez. I can certainly relate to having a mountain of stuff I need to paint that I'm behind on. Never make as much progress as you want. Mm-hmm. I started Hedge Knights yesterday, and you might have misheard me. I did not do the whole box. I did one guy, and that one guy is still not finished. So.
I painted up a Lannister crossbowman.
Yeah.
Does that count?
Hey, progress, buddy. Progress.
I mean, he says with like an army of free folk attachments and other things here to paint, and I painted up a Lannister crossbowman. There you go.
Who wants to paint another raider?
Correct answer. Nobody. Nobody wants to paint another fucking raider. I hate painting them so much. I'm not even gonna lie. I really fucking enjoyed painting the back of the breastplate of a Lannister guardsman. A Lannister crossbowman last night, because I'm like, I get to paint metal and make it look like a breastplate, and think, I never get to do this with free folk. It's actually a different thing. Otherwise, it's just brown. No. Anyway.
Beige, brown.
Beige. Oh, there's a bit of green. Anyway, so I have got one last thing that's on the hobby side that we seem to have randomly ended up being on. We have this. This picture here, which is not just one. This is a whole army of stuff, not just one model or one unit. This is Piojo's stuff that he won Best Painted award with. And as a guest, Kurt, I would like you to rate the overall picture itself, and of course the stuff inside it. What
I love it. I love his basing too on the trays.
I think the basing's actually really nice.
More than I've done with mine. I've done like grass and mud, like basic. But gosh, it puts my painting to shame. I'll say that much. I'll give it a 10 to average out Carlo's 0. So.
That seems reasonable. And Carlo, just to confirm,
we've seen these before, right?
Seems something similar. Yeah. Don't know if we saw them finished, but
we've not seen the Champions of the Stag. I don't think. I think the white on the Champions of the Stag is actually a really nice touch. I do.
I like it.
I think they look pretty bling. They look pretty pimp.
It's like an off-white too. It's like an eggshell or something.
Yeah, just ever so slight. It's really good. I quite like I like the white champions of the stack. I do.
Yeah, really, really great zeros. Great zeros.
There you go. Just to confirm, for people who don't like that part of the show, you get it anyway. Right. So tournaments coming up. Obviously, we talked briefly, and we'll mention it again. The Kansas City event that's coming up in June 11th. Is that right, or was it 12th? I can't remember.
June 11th.
June 11th.
Kansas City. Well, it's like the Kansas City Regional, but it's in Overland Park, which Kansas City, it's just a big sprawl. If you ever played Civ, instead of building tall, it's like building wide. So it's just like there's no space in between these cities. They all just merge together, and it's on the Kansas side.
Is Kansas?
If you fly in, you'll land on the Missouri side because Kansas City straddles 2 states, so it's like half in one state, half in the other state.
Are you invading another state slowly with Kansas?
Are we? Yeah, it's like push comes to shove, more of Kansas City is in Missouri than it is in Kansas. Yes.
Wow. So, there we go.
That's how rivers work, people.
Well, they invade state lines. No. All right. So yeah, the Kansas City event happening not in really Kansas, but Missouri, or maybe it is in Kansas.
No, in Kansas.
Oh, yes. It's in Kansas. Yeah. Is that the Missouri part of Kansas or the no? Yes. Anyway, it is in the in Kansas City, in Kansas, on the 11th of June. Which I'm hoping goes really well for yourself, of course, Kurt. But between now and then, this weekend coming up, it's actually a bank holiday weekend in the UK again. So I've got, I forget when bank holidays are, which is really stupid because I always have them off, and I'm always surprised, which is really nice. But we've got on this weekend, we have got the Battle of Zelanza happening in Zelanza, Warsaw, Poland. We've got the first Sword of Daventry happening in Daventry, UK. Is this the starter box one, Carlo? Or is this the other?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, that's the 30-point starter box event.
Which you're going down to, right?
No, unfortunately, no, not able to.
Ah, sadness. You were going to, right? And then had to pull out, I'm guessing? Or no? I can't remember.
We were hoping to. We were
but anyway, so that's going ahead. Really hope that goes really well. Obviously to the Tane and the guys down there in the kind of like really, I'm going to call it resurgence or the growth of the Daventry club that we've seen over the last 6 months has been great. So I really hope that goes well. We've got New Jersey regional qualifier happening this weekend at Mythicos Studios in New Jersey. Didn't fancy making the trip over there, Kurt, just on the off chance that you didn't get the qualifier from Fab?
To New Jersey? I don't think so. I think my budget allowed for Vegas and then Pittsburgh as well because flights were kind of cheap. But I've always really wanted to try one of those starter box tournaments.
You should run your own.
We'll throw one of those locally, I guess.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to put those kind of requirements on your own Kansas City qualifier?
I think it's too late for that one.
Guys, it's starter box only.
Starter box only.
And then we have Kurt back on the show in like 6 months, and he's like, "Oh, so which starter didn't you own again? Remind us, Kurt." He's like, "Oh no, I own them all." Huh. That's a suspicious thing going on. Anyway, we've also got Training Grounds, an event happening in the Sacramento region of California happening this weekend as well. So that's happening on the Saturday through to, I'm guessing, the Monday. So a 3-day event. I'm going to check this one out. I didn't see a 3-day event before on the site. 7 players through a 30-point event.
Oh wow, yeah. Wait, it does go through to the Monday technically.
Yeah, it does. 30-point event, probably run by, I'm guessing, Trash Panda's going, so I'm guessing the likes of Carl and West Coast will probably be there, or at least representing. So I don't know if that's being run by Carl, but it is Hammerhead Games, who Carl's done some stuff with before. But that's awesome. A team.
Tables will be a 6x4.
It's a team event. It's 2 30-point. You get matched up with another 30-point list and play a team event. It's only 1 day, but Carl put the dates in wrong. That makes more sense, Carl. Blame Carl. But yeah, that's the 30-point. It's a 60-point game, but you pay 30 points for 2 players getting matched up together, which is interesting. And you get different players each round that mix it up just to really mix it up and see what happens. Fun event. I think an event like that could be just really good fun. So we've also got happening another event in Washington, Tacoma, Washington. Bloodlines of Hate, a 30-point event there. Great to see. I think I've seen the Terror Crux Games guys running events before, but it's great to see them again running another event. There's a club tournament happening in Gaming Figures around my neck of the woods on the Sunday. That's this weekend as well. So that's gonna be great. We've got another event happening in Marietta, GA. Is that Georgia? I don't know my state abbreviations. I'm guessing it's Georgia. GA, yeah. Marietta, Georgia. Gigabytes tabletop there, and that's it for this week. Wow, that's tons. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 events again. We consistently getting 6 or 7 or 8 events every week now. Jesus. Which is fantastic.
That's really, really strong, isn't it? You know, that's 300 events over the year.
Mm-hmm. It was actually super interesting because someone had posted something on Facebook, something about like number of events that have been run and how data was collected on events versus casual games and that whole discussion. And I actually did look at the tournaments, the Hall of Champions. Do you know how many events we've got in the Hall of Champions without checking? Top of your head.
210.
Spot on. Spot on, exactly 210.
Literally, spot
yeah,
on.
That's not a joke. 210 people in the Hall of Champions.
Semi-cheat. I knew the other day that it was 200. I actually looked when it was 200. The 210 was a guess. But yeah, okay. I did actually know there were 200 events at some point.
I'm not gonna lie. The actual way I search this is I loaded up the Hall of Champions and just typed in winner because it appears after every name and it comes out. Actually, you're wrong because I think one of them's just been closed. I think the Orcs Jousting event must have just closed since the start of Tourney Grounds. It's now 211.
Maybe somebody called winner is the winner of one of the events, and then I could be right.
I'm not going to check. there's 210 events there that I can't be bothered. But yeah, so clearly, Presidente at Orcs Jousting has just closed their event to ruin my day. There are actually 211.
Obviously, you know, on the same point, you know, there was another 6 events or so run at the weekend. There was a Rocket City qualifier that was won by Lucas Aurelius. So he will be presumably picking up that Nationals qualifier spot. It's a relatively small event, didn't make it, just the one qualifying spot. So I assume that's going to go to him. There was also the quite interesting Weekend Warfare TTS event, which was, of course, a TTS event, but run in the more traditional tournament format of playing, I think, eventually 4 games for the finalists, run over 2 days. I believe the final was the Jacob Glace versus Skunk, and Skunk with his free folk taking the win. Yeah, what's kind of exciting and interesting about this event is that it is one of the highest rated events that's actually been run in quite a long time. The player quality, while the 10-player number is quite low, the player quality at an average of 16-12 is really, really high. You know, most events are significantly below that as their average. So, you know, it tries to give perspective that, like, bigger doesn't always mean better in these events, and there was a lot of very high-quality players in there.
Yeah. It's I actually saw parts of the final game. I didn't see the whole thing, but he actually ran the Mag the Mighty list in the last game and won.
Wow!
Oh yeah!
But he was playing against Jacob's Lannisters, and Jacob said it himself. He played badly. He fed his flayed men into raiders in the hopes that he would kill them, and then giants came over and kicked the shit out of flayed men. And once the flayed men go for the Lannister player, there ain't much left that deals with the dragons, the giants.
There's no plan B. There's no plan B. That's for sure.
And Mag, when there's no plan B, and I tell you, the one thing that I fucking love about Mag, when there's no plan B for your opponent and their plan A doesn't work, Mag really kicks into high gear and goes, "Oh, stompy stomp time!" He's so polar.
How about
Yeah.
welcome to 2022? We must be getting almost to the end of that.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we've
Still,
got
still undefeated in that one mix.
yeah. There's three players up for contention as it stands. Jacob played against Bob earlier today, and Jacob came down with the win against Bob. So that puts us at myself and Wop, who who are going to play later this week, and Jacob, who is undefeated currently as well, who's been submarining his way up. So the winner of mine and Wop's game will go on to face Jacob. To the winner of that game next week will be the winner of the event. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I plan to continue kicking people's heads in, to put it nicely. And hopefully I'll beat
We've
Wop.
got either a Free Folk Stark or a Lannister Stark final there. That's really interesting, with again a really, really high level of player entry. So interesting to see them performing at that level. No Baratheons, which is actually an interesting break from the norm. We've seen Baratheons dominating all over the show recently. Been all the hype. But
the highest Baratheon is Suster, who I believe is at one loss, 3 wins.
Okay, yeah.
Over 4. He's still got a 5th game to go. So we'll see. But yeah, there were not many Baratheons doing that well in the event. Let's just have a quick look at the stats without going into the whole thing.
There are 18% of the entry. So there we go.
And they're currently a win rate of 29%.
Ouch. Also, the TTS qualifier kicked off earlier this week. It also has a really, really high entry, average entry. You basically we almost ended up at 32, ended up with 29. So 3 players got buys, including Mickey. It's a seeded knockout event, and we've seen I think 3 games have gone on so far. Interestingly, going back to this idea of perceptions about players, so far 100% of games have gone to seed. So whatever the seeding said was the player who was going to win have won so far. I'd be really interested to know how long that holds for. Even some of the players who are very similarly rated, very little difference in their seeding, they've all still gone to the higher rated player so far. I'd be interested to know just like how much these seedings hold out and whether or not we see any really big upsets. But yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing these games play out. Or get and sit and watch one of them.
Yeah, no, that's wicked. That's cool. We'll check in with that as well. So yeah, obviously we'll come talk about that at some of the later date. And then we've also got a special mention to Scabman and the guys over there who I'm going to give a sneak peek are going to be on next week, I think is the hope. So we're going to have Scadman and Luke from the store that they play at on next week as guests to talk about what the events they're running and all the charity stuff that they're doing and all the other bits and bobs, and of course the Welsh Nationals that's happening in the Welsh GT that's happening in the UK later this year as well. There we go. We're done for the week. We're done. We're under 3 hours. I haven't eaten too much into your time, have I, today, Kurt?
Oh no, I took the day off. So.
Good.
That's cleared my schedule for you boys.
Obviously, anyone playing games, I really hope everything goes well. What's your next thing that you're looking forward to aside from the Kansas City event? Have you got anything else planned, Kurt? You even just playing some weekend games or going down to the store or?
Yeah, I'm the community ambassador at our friendly local game store. So we have weekly game nights where we play casually or give demos to new people that are looking to play. So anyone in the Kansas City area, the metropolitan area, swing on by Tabletop Game and Hobby. We play every Wednesday around 6 o'clock in the evening. Yeah, if anyone ever wants to get a game in, hit us up. Happy to have you. We have beer. So there's like a cafe area. So get some booze and have a good time.
Beers and games. Who doesn't want to do
beers
that?
and games? Yeah,
that's literally what the London GT is. Beers and games. So
hell yeah.
Sounds fantastic. No, honestly, brilliant. And thank you very much for coming on as well and taking the time out to come and talk to us. And yeah,
thank you for having me.
I
had a great time. If you need me back for Baratheons Hero Box 3 and 4, hit me up.
What makes you think they'll ever get released? Anyway. All right. Any last words from yourself, Carlo, or can we sign off?
No, just these events flying past. Gamers Haven 21st. Also, the Italian Nationals. I forget if we've talked about it. They're both in about 3 weeks' time now, or something like that. Maybe 4 weeks' time. Honestly, check them out. Both events are looking spicy as fuck. The Italian one got players coming in from France, coming in from Spain. Sunday Slaughter, their qualifier, I know, is still getting people coming in from out of state. It's going to be another 4-player qualifier, I'm sure. Check them out. It'll be good events.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sounds good. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in yet again for another nearly 3 hours of chat today. Thank you very much for Kurt for joining us, and of course Kurt's cat. He really is the evil mastermind of the US. Hey,
cats to feed. That's what sitting on the desk means.
Animals are great. It's a shame that she's not sat there today, but usually this seat has got a dog in it. So, yeah. Thank you very much for everyone who tunes in. Thank you very much for Kurt, and again, thank you very much to Carlo for being here and keeping the site running, and doing little things like adding things in that haven't even been released yet. Anyway, guys, have a great week. Enjoy your games, and we'll see you next time. Ready, aim, release! Anyone see my mammoth?